Ladies and gentlemen, the host of today's forum, Acting Minister of Gender Equality and Family, and other distinguished guests are entering the hall right now. Please give a big round of applause. Acting Minister of Gender Equality and Family, Shin Young-suk, and please give another round of applause to our VIPs. Thank you so much. 2024 Korea Gender Equality Forum. For today's forum, there are many distinguished guests from various sectors of society and countries. Acting Minister Shin Young-suk and Climate Change Center Chair Yoo Young-soo and others, they are entering this conference hall and taking their seats.
네, 오늘 이 자리에
Thank you so much for being here with us. I believe we are right now facing challenges, grave challenges for the humanity. AI and climate change are not just about science and technology. It is about how we should reflect upon humans and society. At the center of the shift, there is a gender equality. AI for humans and society, and for response to climate change, we need to have fairness and diversity as our primary values. Fairness and diversity are very essential values to create a society for all and for better innovation. It is a truly essential value that leads to gender equal society, which is also an essential value for future society. I believe that everyone, online, offline, would agree to this. Now, I'd like to watch a video on gender equal society at higher standards. Please watch the video. Since 2020, the Korea Gender Equality Forum has served as a platform to share the Republic of Korea's gender equality policy experiences with the global community and promote the expansion of gender equality agendas. Experts from various fields, government organizations, businesses have presented a new gender equality paradigm by engaging in discussions and exploring solutions to challenging issues. The Korea Gender Equality Forum is striving to present a direction for global community to pursue together by addressing gender equality agendas that embrace gender, generations, nations, and regions. At 2024 Korea Gender Equality Forum, we will navigate future industries and gender equality. It will be a meaningful occasion to discuss the rapidly changing future industries and how gender equality can contribute to innovation and sustainability. What gender equality perspectives should be addressed in the fields of AI and climate change? The keynote speech will discuss making AI work for people and society. How we can measure and understand the impact of AI on gender and race and the gender equality issues within the larger context of climate change. In the first session, we will explore the challenges of ensuring fairness and diversity in AI development and utilization, and examine the challenges for talent development and enhancing diversity in the AI field. In the second session, we will delve into the impact of global climate change on regions and genders, as well as the importance of international cooperation. We will also address a transition towards a net zero economy and employment prospects. 2024 Korea Gender Equality Forum, paving the way for innovation through fairness and diversity and opening a sustainable future through gender equality. Let's take the first step now. 2024 Korea Gender Equality Forum. I'd like to greet everyone participating in this forum, both offline and online. I am Bang No-won, the announcer from KBS, who will be moderating and emceeing for this occasion. Let me introduce our VIPs. First, the host of today's forum, Acting Minister of Gender Equality and Family, Shin Young-suk. Please give her a big round of applause. Next, Lee In-sun, a chair of the National Assembly Commission on Gender Equality and Family. A keynote speaker of today's forum, Climate Change Center Chair Yu Young-soo. Please give a big hand. Next, Ha Myung, chair of the Korean women's groups. Next, Norwegian ambassador to Korea, Ms. Anna Kari Hansen. Great to see you. And German ambassador to Korea, Georg Wilfried Schmidt. Please give a big hand. Next, the chairs of each session. First, Kwon Oh-nam, President of Korea Federation of Women's Science and Technology Associations, and UN Global Compact Korea Network, Yu Yeon-chul. Please give a big hand. He's the Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network Korea. And there are so many other ambassadors to Korea gracing this occasion with their presence. Irish Ambassador to Korea, Michelle Winthrop. Please give a big hand. Great to see you. And next to her, Tunisian Ambassador to Korea, Kai Staraji. Next, Belgian Ambassador to Korea, Bruno Jans. Please give a big hand. Next, Natalia Fedri de Guello, President of ASAS. Please give her a big hand. And please look at the screen to read the other VIPs who are participating in this forum. There are so many great distinguished speakers participating for this forum. In the interest of time, I will not name each and every one, and the moderators will introduce these speakers at each designated session. I would like to start an opening ceremony. We'll invite Acting Minister of Gender Equality and Family, Shin Young-suk, to the podium for an opening speech. Please give her a big round of applause.
Good afternoon. I am Shin Young-suk, Vice Minister of Gender Equality and Family. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who have joined us today, either in person or online, for Korea Gender Equality Forum. I would like to extend special thanks to Representative Lee In-sun, who is the chair of the National Assembly Women and Family Committee, for taking time. And I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to Ms. Armida Ali Shabana, the Executive Secretary of UN ESCOP, and Ambassador Anna Kari Hansen Obin of Norway to Korea, Ambassador Georg Wilfried Schmidt of Germany to Korea, and other distinguished guests and ambassadors from Ireland, Tunisia, and Belgium. My thanks also go to Mr. Andrew Strait, the Associate Director of the Ada Lovelace Institute, and Chairperson Yu Young-suk of the Climate Change Center for their keynote speeches, and President Kwon Oh-nam of the Korea Federation of Women Science and Technology Association, and Executive General Yu Yeon-chul of UN Global Compact Network Korea for moderating sessions, and all of our speakers and panelists. Many organizations and institutions participate in the event, including Ms. He Myung, chairperson of the Korean National Council of Women. Thank you. These days, we can feel significant changes happening around us. With the development of AI-driven industries, our way of life is changing day by day. We are also experiencing the effects of climate change through the heat waves and tropical night. Under these circumstances, I think it's important that this forum focuses on AI and climate change issues under the theme of future industries and gender equality. And as a responsible member of the international community, the Korea and government announced the Digital Bill of Rights, which contains 5 principles of freedom, fairness, safety, innovation, and solidarity. The government is committed to protecting the safety and fundamental rights of citizens while pursuing digital technology innovation. And under this vision, the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family is also actively supporting education and training for new and high value-added jobs such as AI, semiconductor, basic design, bio, and strengthening employment support services to help women with career disruption enter high-quality jobs through Women's Internship Program for new jobs and multi-ministry collaboration projects. In addition, we established a dedicated response team for deepfake-related sex crimes at the Digital Sex Crime Victim Support Center, providing comprehensive services ranging from victim counseling to consent deletion and support and the monitoring of distribution. Distinguished participants, we are living in a time of great upheaval and extreme uncertainty. The pace of innovation driven by AI is so rapid that it's difficult to predict how climate change will change human life. To overcome these challenges, we need to harness the creativity and capability of our communities. In particular, differences in diversity must become sources of our creativity, and inclusion and integration of diversity should create a synergy. And I hope that through the discussions happening at today's forum, we can gather wisdom for Korea and the international community to move toward a more gender equitable society, including diversity and fairness in the future industries. Once again, I would like to thank all of you for your participation in this forum. Let us remember that our choices and actions today will determine our tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Acting Minister Shin Young-suk, for the welcoming remarks.
다음은 대한민국 양성평등 포럼.
Next, we'd like to hear congratulatory messages from our VIPs. First, Chair of Gender Equality and Family Committee under National Assembly, Lee In-sun, will come to the podium for a congratulatory message. Please give a big hand. Great to see you all. Thank you. Thank you so much. Today's topic is quite heavy, so it seems like everyone is nervous. That is why I greeted you twice. I am in charge of the planning and finance at the National Assembly, and I'm also serving as chair for Gender Equality and Family in the National Assembly. Today, we are gathered at the 2024 Korea Gender Equality Forum. This gives me a tremendous honor. Let me first extend my gratitude to the Vice Minister and Acting Minister of Gender Equality and Family, Shin Young-suk. She's doing her job in a very excellent manner. Please give a big hand. Thank you, Acting Minister Shin Young-suk and her organizing team for this great event. Today's forum is about one of the globally important issues, which is gender equality. That is why we've invited so many distinguished guest ambassadors to Korea, Kwon Nam, the Acting Minister of Gender Equality and the Family, and the Executive Director of the Global Compact Network Korea and Climate Change Center Chair. All of these people are gathered to gathered for today's forum. Thank you so much for your participation. Now we are living in an age of technological revolution, AI, blockchain, big data, and others. We are exposed to these latest technologies. However, these latest technologies do not offer equal access to everyone. We have to think about this matter. And especially there is a gender gap when it comes to access to these latest technologies. If you have to consider there is any gender gap to the latest technologies. If we look at the AI sector, which will be the keynote session topic, AI brings both good sides and negative sides. I believe the fake is one of the negative side effects of AI. Algorithms depend on male-dominated or male-centered data, which creates biases against women, and we have to make sure there's no bias in the development process of AI. And there's another topic, climate change. Climate change is one of the most important challenges for the humanity. When we face natural disasters and other crises, then the women and children, they should be protected from another vulnerability that can be created by climate change. Our committee under the National Assembly will pay close attention to the issues brought upon during this forum, and will try to make legislations addressing these challenges. With this, I'd like to extend my gratitude once again, and I wish you health and happiness. Thank you so much for your attention. That was the Chair of Gender Equality and Family Committee under the National Assembly, Lee In-sun.
2024
2024, the Gender Equalities Forum is being held, and there is a speaker who couldn't be here today but sent her congratulatory message from afar. I would like to welcome via video Ms. Armida Sasia Alishavana, Executive Secretary of the UN.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to speak at this forum and extend my warm congratulations to the government of the Republic of Korea for organizing this important event. As we gather today, our region is undergoing a profound transformation. The rapid rise of digital technologies, AI, and urgent actions on climate change are forging new industries and opportunities that were unimaginable just a few years ago. For women and girls, these emerging sectors offer new avenues to leadership, entrepreneurship, and decent work that were previously out of reach. Yet the promise of progress is not guaranteed. Women and girls in the Asia-Pacific region continue to face lower access to digital technologies, finance and credit, are underrepresented in science, technology, and engineering, and encounter systemic barriers that put them at risk of being left behind in digital and green transitions. This is not just a missed opportunity for women, it's a profound loss for economies, societies, and our common future. To ensure women benefit from emerging industries and enable both people and the planet to flourish, we must act decisively. I propose 3 key solutions. First, we must close the gender digital divide. This means providing women and girls, especially in underserved areas, with equal access to digital technologies by investing in digital infrastructure, offering digital skills training, and promoting women in STEM. We can empower them to excel in both the digital and green economies. We must also champion women's leadership in emerging industries. This involves supporting their transition with specialized training, including in digital technology, artificial intelligence, and green jobs, and implementing enabling policies that balance caregiving responsibilities and guarantee decent work. Finally, we must scale up investment to boost women's entrepreneurship and drive innovation. Gender-responsive climate financing and improved access to credit and venture capital for women entrepreneurs is critical to closing the gender finance gap, particularly in male-dominated sectors. We are proud to support women's transition into digital and green economies. Our flagship study for the 80th session of our commission offers a robust framework to help the region foster digital innovation that drive social, economic, and environmental progress. And in the past 5 years, our Catalyzing Women's Entrepreneurship program has mobilized over $100 million and provided digital literacy training to thousands of women entrepreneurs, empowering them to innovate boldly and drive transformative change for the future. Looking ahead, we will convene in November the Beijing Plus 30 Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference in collaboration with UN Women. This conference will be another pivotal moment to power up our efforts to unlock the immense capabilities of women and girls. As we engage in the discussion today, let us remember that our shared purpose is our greatest strength. Together, we can ensure women and girls are at the forefront of the economies that will shape our collective future. I wish you all a very productive forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Armida Zasalshia Ali Shabana, Executive Secretary of UNESCOP, and for the congratulatory message. And we are providing simultaneous interpretation. Channel number 1 is Korean, channel number 2 is English. And we are going to hear from ambassadors.
안나 카리 한센.
First, Norwegian Ambassador Anna Kari Hansen-Obid, please come to the podium for a congratulatory speech. Please give her a welcoming round of applause.
Dear Shin Yoon-suk, Minister of Gender and Family, Chairperson for Gender Equality and Family Committee, Ms. Lee In-soon, Excellencies, dear friends, guests, 안녕 아십니까? 저는 노르웨이 대사 안나 카리 우빈입니다. And I'm very pleased to be here and address this distinguished audience. Gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessity, foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. Gender equality also holds great economic value for a country. Norway is a good example of how women entering the Norwegian workforce and contribute to economic growth. We are all facing difficult challenges: rapid climate change, an unsustainable international security situation, a global increase in extreme poverty, the surge of digital world, including the artificial intelligence, and declining fertility rates, only to mention a few. And those challenges have important implications for the women, peace, and security agenda. Norway was one of the first countries to develop a national action plan on women, peace, and security in 2006. Women, peace, and security was a priority area also for Norway during our rotating period at the Security Council, a theme that Korea also keeps high on the agenda during its current period at the Council. Norway's 5th National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, launched last year, aims to strengthen national and international implementation of this agenda towards 2030. In this respect, I'm very pleased to be present at the 5th Gender Equality Forum here in Korea. And I'm also pleased to see so many colleagues supporting this forum, and also happy to share the stage with my German colleague. Norway and Germany work closely together and are members of the Equity 2030 Alliance, which aims at building an equitable future for all by closing gaps and create more gender-inclusive solutions in science, technology, and financing. In a world where technology and science have the power to shape the future, we must ensure that women and girls be actively included in the design and development of solutions. Artificial intelligence can be a powerful tool and at the same time a major risk factor. Using historically biased data sets, for example, can teach an artificial intelligence system that it is correct to reinforce discriminatory measures. It is clear that there is a need for better follow-up on this technology. One example is to teach the algorithms to learn smarter and be a positive force for equality. Fortunately, much is being done to bring out the positive forces in the technology. Last week, during the UN General Assembly in New York, world leaders adopted a pact for the future, including a global digital compact. This is the very first comprehensive global framework for digital cooperation and artificial intelligence governance. At the heart of this compact is commitment to design, use, and govern technology for the benefit of all. Digital solutions and artificial intelligence are not smart if this had not been designed for women or having women in mind as well. This brings me to the other main topic of this conference, climate change, the defining issue of our time. Climate change and climate policies can have different impact on women and men, and we must ensure that the green shift does not amplify gender inequality, but bring about equal job opportunities and just transition to carbon-neutral societies. Together with the other Nordic countries, Norway has gathered knowledge on the interconnections between gender and climate change. And at the UN Commission on the Status of Women in 2022, we presented a commitment on gender equality and climate change, including ensuring equal access in decision-making processes on climate change. Distinguished guests, we need to look at climate policies with a gender lens and build more awareness and actively evaluate and consider the gender impact of our policy measures. This is why addressing climate policy at Korea Gender Equality Forum is so important, and I wish all participants fruitful discussions and a successful forum for our better future. Thank you for your attention. 감사합니다.
네, 세계에서
So thank you very much. That was the speech from the Norwegian ambassador. So Norway is one of the highest rankings countries in terms of gender equality. So now we are going to invite Ambassador Georg Wilfried Schmidt of the Germany for his congratulatory remarks.
안녕하십니까. Dear Vice Minister, Honorable Member of Parliament, and there's so many dignitaries in the room, and it's easier when you speak later, so you could say all protocol observed, as they did in other forums as well. But then I come to ladies, and I'm very happy to see also some gentlemen in the room, because what we're talking about is not just dealing with ladies, it's dealing with all of us in society. And I think many men still don't get it, that it's very much about men as much as about women. So in Germany, gender equality is enshrined in our constitution, but when the people wrote that constitution, they already saw in the 1950s that we're far away from it. And it's been a constant struggle for decades to move the legal requirements, but also, which is equally or even much more important, to move the cultural mindset of how we want to live together. And I think it was said before also by my Norwegian colleague, people realize then that it's also about the full potential of a society. So even if you are not convinced of gender equality for other reasons, but look at the hard facts and numbers, it just means that that a society doesn't use its full potential. And can we afford that? Today, if I look at Germany, women make up of 35% in our parliament, and there are all kinds of rules about women's participation in the workforce and leadership positions. So we have much more of a presence, and I think the fact that we had a lady as chancellor who was highly respected served as a quite strong role model. But it's a lot about role models. If you look at science, for instance, when women, where the female scientists, where women say, I want to be like her. And this is what catches your heart. And you can go through this in many, many different areas, the importance of role models. And despite advances, we still see that women are underrepresented and often excluded from critical decision-making spaces. And one of the things that are quite important, I think, is gender pay gap that persists. And that cannot be acceptable, that you earn less money than a man, even sometimes for the same work. And we do still see a disproportionate share of women in unpaid care work. Now, I stand here as a man, and I'm envious of the way we are today, at least in Germany. I would have wished when I was a young father that some of the provisions are available today would have been available then, because I would have organized my life in a different way then. And I think I and the family, we would have benefited from it, but it was not available or not as easily available. So my call is also for the men, take it as an opportunity. You will not regret it if you spend more time doing other things, if you spend more time with the children when you have them. This time never comes back, and it's something that I can really encourage anyone. So this is coming back to the underlying structures and underlying systems sustaining inequalities. And I think there's still a long way to go in Germany and in our interactions with other nations. When I look at our interactions with other nations, we have for some years what our minister calls a feminist foreign policy. I remember as Africa director, way before we had feminist foreign policy, one travel to an African country together with my Swedish colleague. And at that time, Sweden was one of the first forerunners in feminist foreign policy. And it opened my eye, because we were all looking at the political divides between the government and the opposition. And my Swedish colleague said, no, in this visit, when we do this, I want to see what is the situation of women. And suddenly it added a very different angle, because the women said, whether it's the opposition or whether it's the people in government, we all have similar issues. So it added a very different angle to our way of looking at the situation. And I will not forget that. It's just a personal anecdote. My Norwegian colleague also already mentioned the Equity Alliance, and we're very proud to be partnering with Norway in this. And I see every country has a different history, every country comes from a different perspective, but we all share like common challenges when it comes to gender equality. And isn't it strange that socially and technologically so advanced nations, and yet we have these gender disparities remaining in leadership, politics, and technology? I mean, when you ask yourself, isn't it strange? And I would say, if we look at a global gender gap report, I would think when you sort of analyze a nation, it should be, we all look at the GDP, but it should be as important as looking at the GDP to look at the global gender gap and say, like, where do we find our countries and where do we want to find them? And we don't do that enough yet. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand here and we talk about two very important topics, technological advancement and environmental sustainability. And climate change and AI, they're not neutral forces, but they're shaped by human choices, and they affect men and women and marginalized groups in very different ways. Just one concrete example, again, like climate change and floodings. If you look at the statistics, in many countries, the amount of women who die from flooding is much higher than the amount of men. And why? Because in many countries, women are not given the opportunity to learn how to swim. Now, when you come from a country where it's normal that men and women have to attend swimming lessons, whether their parents like it or not, it's something that doesn't come to your mind. But when you break it down, then you have one concrete example, and there are many, many others. It's like, say, this cannot happen. Just because you were denied a certain opportunity, you're put into a much higher risk. And it tells you a lot about, like, first of all, to realize and to acknowledge what's happening. And there are unconscious biases in many, many ideas. And it was talked about unconscious biases. Also, the Honourable Member of Parliament, she talked about unconscious biases in AI and other systems. So when I look at the country here that we're in, it's shocking to see also that deep fakes and porns are used against women exclusively. So there is a very special case about this and to do something about it. And the minister mentioned that earlier. So how do we ensure the challenges and opportunities presented to us by climate change and AI contribute to a more equal and just society for all genders, and not deepen existing disparities? I think that's a truly important question for all of us. That's why we're here together in this room. There will be a lot of expertise on that, and I all wish us a very good and fruitful forum on this, and thank you for inviting me and organizing this forum. 감사합니다.
슈미트 주한 독일 대사님의
Thank you very much. That was a congratulatory speech from the Ambassador Georg Wilfried Schmidt. Thank you very much for all your congratulatory remarks. It's time to hear the first keynote of Korea Gender Equality Forum. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Andrew Strait, Associate Director of the Ada Lovelace Institute in the United Kingdom. Ada Lovelace Institute is named after the first female computer scientist, Ada Lovelace, and is leading research aimed at developing AI for missions like gender equality. He's going to speak on the topic of making AI work for people and society, understanding the impact of AI on gender and racial inequalities. Please welcome Mr. Andrew Strait.
My name is Andrew Straits. I'm an Associate Director of Emerging Technology and Industry Practice at the Ada Lovelace Institute, a research body based in London with a mission to ensure that data and AI work for people and society. I want to start off by saying I'm so sorry to not be there in Seoul with you all today for this incredible event, but want to express my gratitude to the Korean Gender Equality Forum for giving me the chance to speak about this topic, making AI work for people in society, understanding the impacts of gender and racial inequalities in AI systems. By inequalities, of course, I mean the uneven distribution of AI systems, uneven distribution of resources, opportunities, or outcomes among different groups in society. And by AI systems, I broadly mean in this talk any kind of AI system or computational system used to try to achieve tasks that previously required human attention, behavior, cognition, or capabilities. If improperly designed, these systems can exacerbate societal inequalities. And in this talk, I want to talk about how that happens and offer some solutions for a way forward. So I'd like to begin with a quick story. This story begins about a hospital here where I live in London. This hospital, St. George's, ran a medical school, and this medical school had a problem. They were receiving about 2,000 admissions applications a year, which is far too many for their staff to get through, and they wanted to make a process for making their admissions easier and more objective. So to do that, they designed an algorithmic system which was trained on previous data around the successful admissions to their hospital. This algorithm looked at all kinds of aspects of admissions, so their CV, their resume, their name, and it was implemented for about a 4-year period. But after those 4 years, it was discovered to be horrendously racially biased. It was rejecting any applicant who had non-European sounding names. Now, this is a common issue in algorithmic systems where a particular data point may be one that has an overweighted importance in the decision-making process of the system. But perhaps the most shocking thing about this example is that it happened in 1982. And more than 40 years later, we're still grappling with many of the same challenges around algorithmic and racial bias in AI systems. The University of Texas admissions, for example, found that an algorithmic system used in their admissions process for computer science department was unfairly discriminating against women and minorities. And similar, an Amazon recruitment algorithm used in 2015 for making admissions decisions for their recruitment was found to be discriminating against female names and anyone who went to an all-female university. So gender and racial bias in algorithmic systems continues. It continues to this day. And it's therefore important that we reflect on why these issues are so persistent, what steps we can take to address them. One of the reasons why it's so persistent is because AI is so persistent. It's almost everywhere in society now. It includes systems that predict the risk of a loan that will be rejected, determine what information you see in your social media news feed, or assess the results of a school exam for your children. Today, AI is being used in ways that shape how we understand each other, how the state understands its citizens, and how even we understand ourselves. It is changing the nature of our relationships with our teacher, our loved ones, our doctors, our lawyers, and our politics. Put simply, AI systems are pervasive and ubiquitous. And that means that AI biases as well are becoming pervasive and ubiquitous. In the last 5 years, a growing body of research has found severe issues of gender, racial, or sociodemographic discrimination caused by biased algorithmic systems that weight certain characteristics over others. These include automated credit card applications that offer far better terms to male than female applicants with the same information, algorithms that discriminate who can enter a country based on their gender or the color of their skin, algorithms that are used to proctor test exams that cannot identify darker-skinned faces and accuse those individuals of cheating. And even algorithms that are designed to protect women from domestic violence, but which fail to do so because they fail to appropriately weight certain risks, in some cases leading to death. These issues may only be getting worse as we move into a world of generative AI systems like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini. These are technologies that are trained on much larger amounts of data, often from the internet. And because they're from the internet, they often bake in all kinds of biases against women and minorities. One study from Dr. Abeba Brahani found that one of the largest data sets used to train models, like ChatGPT, contains extreme racist and misogynistic content. And that content, that data, creates biases that lead to discriminatory behaviors in their use. A recent study found that generative AI systems produce racist responses simply based on the kind of dialect that one uses when speaking. So speaking with it in African-American vernacular English will produce more negative and more hostile responses than speaking to it in sort of the Queen's English. Similarly, these kinds of systems can exacerbate existing kinds of gendered harms against women and minorities. One in particular is non-consensual generative pornography. A 2019 Deep Trace study found non-consensual deepfake pornography accounted for 96% of all deepfake videos produced on the internet. And almost all of those videos were of women. Similarly, a 2024 study drew on a survey of over 16,000 respondents in 10 different countries and found that 2.2% of all of those individuals had personally experienced non-consensual generative pornography victimization. That's a higher rate of victimization in most countries than theft or violent crime. We also know that AI is linked to risks of job displacement that can exacerbate societal inequalities. About 50 to 70% of the growth in the US wage inequality between 1980 and 2016 was caused by automation. And this will only get worse as AI technologies become more ubiquitous. The International Monetary Fund estimates that about 60% of jobs in advanced economies will be exposed to automation. But crucially, this automation will not be felt equally. Because of existing gender equality gaps in certain roles like STEM sciences or senior leadership positions, more women than men stand to lose their jobs by the end of the decade because of the rise of artificial intelligence and automation. So how do we address this issue? I think first, it's important to acknowledge that AI technologies can exacerbate gender, racial, and sociodemographic inequalities. One of the reasons I think this happens is because it's very easy to think of AI as a kind of magic wand, this silver bullet technology that can be applied to solve any kind of issue or task. It's often thought of as being more objective than humans. But what this fails to reflect is that these technologies simply reflect the biases of the data, developers, users in society that build and use them. To put it very simply, AI people are biased, and that means that AI systems are going to be biased because AI is simply people all the way down. It's people who make up data, people who collect and label that data, people who train an AI system, people who sell that system, and people who use that system, and people who are ultimately impacted by those systems. So getting this right means working towards a world where technology supports all members of society. That's a world in which we think about the societies that we want to build first, rather than the technologies that we want to build. That requires first understanding how biases can arise in these systems, and that's what I'd like to talk about now in the next few slides. So first, I think one of the main causes of bias in these kinds of systems is oftentimes an issue that arises at different stages of their development and deployment. This graphic comes from David Leslie and team at the Alan Turing Institute and reflects how biases can arise in different stages of the design, development, and deployment context of AI systems. It specifically looks at healthcare applications, but it's widely applicable to almost any context. In this graphic, you can see that real-world patterns of health inequality discrimination are often reflected in discriminatory data sets that reflect and exacerbate those biases. That then feeds into bias design and deployment practices, where a tool might be designed for one type of individual or one community that does not work for others. And in turn, those systems can have application injustices, where they're used in ways to discriminate or exclude certain members of society, such as over-surveilling a particular population or excluding certain demographics from job applications. One of the major issues that we see as well is around representation. Diversity and representation are crucial for developing better AI products because they help reduce bias, provide broader perspectives, and improve problem solving. By including researchers from varied backgrounds, AI systems can be designed to be more inclusive, effective, and beneficial for a much wider range of users, ultimately leading to products that better serve and empower all segments of society. But that's not what we see often when it comes to the gender and racial gaps in research. 70% of the most cited AI papers in the last 3 years have come from US-based institutions and organizations, reflecting a regional inequality. There are enormous gender inequalities in AI research. This 2017 study found that the gender imbalance across 23 countries for people who are published in major machine learning conferences is about 88% men against women. And there are enormous inequalities in language and in the types of data used to train AI systems. About 50% of all internet-level data is in English, with Spanish being the next closest at 5.5%. The problem is that when we start to move to a world where AI systems are trained on large amounts of internet-level data, we see those language inequalities and biases reflected in the outcomes. A recent study from Rest of World looked at how ChatGPT fails to produce sensical responses in languages spoken by hundreds of millions of people, like Bengali, Kurdish, and Tamil. Now, that means that not all people in society will equally benefit from AI systems if representation gaps are not closed. Another issue is around systemic bias in society. I'm using here an example from the US healthcare context, my home country. In our US healthcare system, there's an algorithmic tool designed to identify individuals who are eligible for additional care or improvements in care who might have complex medical needs. Now, this system is deployed across the hospitals in the United States, affecting over 200 million patients in the United States. And an evaluation in 2019 found that the system was offering less care to Black Americans than to white Americans, even though they were equally sick. One of the major reasons why this happened was because it was using a data point to make that determination of eligibility for care that was total health care costs accrued in a single year. And that single data point, unfortunately, failed to acknowledge the systemic bias and racial injustice issues in the United States healthcare system. The reality is that Black Americans do not accrue very much healthcare costs in 1 year compared to white Americans because we live in the United States has many biases around the access to care for those communities, a lot of demonstrated and evidenced discrimination against Black Americans seeking healthcare contexts, which has created a sense of distrust against those communities. So the simple determination of that one data point about healthcare costs accrued created a tool that in turn continuously biased and denied care to millions of Americans, Black Americans. Discriminatory data is another issue we see. I'm drawing here an example from Bloomberg, which did an analysis of stable diffusion, an image generation model that takes text inputs and generates images as outputs. This generation model is deployed in all kinds of products that we might use every day, including Canva. It draws on data sets of millions of images scraped from the internet and labeled by humans. And what Bloomberg did was they prompted this text-to-image model to create representations of workers for 14 different jobs, 300 images for 7 jobs that are typically considered high-paying in the US and 7 that are considered low-paying. The results found that jobs that were images for jobs that tended to be high-paying, such as CEO or lawyer, tended to be representing individuals who had lighter skin colors, while images for lower-paying jobs, such as social worker or fast food worker, tended to represent images of darker-toned individuals. A similar breakdown can be seen in gender inequalities. This example shows how images generated for prompts like architect or engineer produced almost always images that appeared to be perceived men, while images that were generated for jobs like housekeeper or social worker tended to be perceived women. Representation issues are critically important, but they're not the only issue that we see with these systems. Bias design deployment is another major concern. I'm drawing here on 3 pieces of work that my colleagues Mavis Matarori, Anna Studman, and Aidan Pepin did, where they looked at the ways in which inequalities can arise in the UK's health and care system. One issue is around bias design and deployment and these issues of data divides. During the COVID-19 pandemic, our National Health Service found that individuals from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds were up to twice as likely to die from COVID-19 than white Britons. However, the health service was unable to investigate possible reasons for this or to offer recommendations to prevent death due to a lack of data. Much of the data that they acquire is coming from digital healthcare technologies, like doctor applications that allow individuals to report their symptoms or identify if they've been diagnosed with COVID-19. Now, the problem we found when we did a national representative survey was that data-driven technologies are not experienced equally in the UK. There is a digital divide where many communities, based on their age, their gender, their race, simply do not have access to internet-connected devices like laptops or phones. And that thereby means that as we move to a more digitized health service, that creates a health data divide, where digitally excluded people are missing or excluded from data-driven health technologies, decision-making, and healthcare. If this data divide isn't closed, those health inequalities can be exacerbated. We followed this research up by talking with developers of data-driven healthcare systems to understand where inequalities might arise in their pipeline for development to deployment of a healthcare technology. We found that at almost every stage along the development pipeline, there are knots, points where health inequality issues arise, but are oftentimes not seriously addressed by a development team. These include the use of very poor data proxies for identifying, making assumptions about the experiences of digitally excluded people. It also included data quality issues, including certain diverging inferences in which certain organizations were drawing wrongful inferences about the health experiences of certain communities. The result of this knotted pipeline is it creates a reinforcing system of unequal systemic impacts for Black, minority, and women communities in the United Kingdom's healthcare service. Lastly, there's issues of biased applications. This is a situation in which we have technologies that appear to work for people, have a very laudable goal of trying to improve access to healthcare, but they nonetheless result in exclusionary outcomes. This project involved a public engagement with people in the United Kingdom who are experiencing socioeconomic poverty. And one of the things that we asked them about was their experience of using healthcare applications that connect a user to their doctor. These are applications that allow you to ask for information on appointments, ask for medical advice, get test results, or seek further follow-on care. And the result was that many individuals experiencing this socioeconomic inequality described these technologies as being exclusionary. They created barriers for their ability to contact their doctor. They were oftentimes malfunctioning. They asked for more information when they'd already been provided. They required signing in at certain times of the day. All in all, it resulted in a situation in which these individuals felt this app was replacing their experience of a doctor rather than complementing it. And that ultimately harmed their trust in the UK's wider healthcare system and denied them care they critically needed. So what can be done about these different kinds of ways in which AI systems can raise bias and inequality issues? Well, for practitioners, I'd like to point to a wonderful resource that our colleagues at Center for Democracy and Technology produced called Navigating Demographic Measurement for Fairness and Equity. One of the major challenges for addressing bias and inequality issues is ensuring that you have data sets that represent the different kinds of demographics and their experiences to understand where inequalities might rise. Acquiring that data is extremely difficult. And in this program of work, CDT have offered several solutions and recommendations for how to do that. They include establishing ongoing relationships with communities affected by measurement activities and inequalities to co-design data collection and handling strategies, discuss potential risks and benefits, and collaboratively define fairness goals. They also suggest using methods that avoid generating or storing sensitive data and to take great care before using observation and inference methods that identify characteristics that may be protected, such as racial or gender characteristics. Lastly, they ask for a very important aspect, which is to always assess your system's equalities impacts in applied context and in a continuous way. AI systems can be dynamic, they can change over time. A system that might work in one context applied to another might not work, and that requires us to assess and evaluate these systems in an ongoing and continuous basis. For policymakers and regulators, our policy briefing on access denied includes several recommendations for how you can consider equalities impacts in the design deployment of AI systems. These include mandating the use of equalities impact assessments and routine auditing and monitoring to assess for potential bias, particularly in high-stakes contexts like employment, healthcare, or education. We suggest using funding initiatives to increase representation in AI and computer science teams and to engage with members of protected groups in designing policy solutions. We also recommend that governments provide clear metrics for developers of what they think bias and discrimination means. And finally, we suggest that governments must address digital divides by offering non-digital options as they seek to employ more digital technologies into society. I want to conclude with just a final remark, which is that to improve our practices, laws, and policies around AI development, we do have to consider how we can build these technologies for all members of society, and what that might mean for how we change the way in which we think about the power of AI systems and their appropriate use in society. I want to thank you all so much again for having me come and speak. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
네, 박수 부탁드립니다. 영국에서 기존
Please give another round of applause. That was Andrew Strait, co-chair of Ada Lovelace Research Center. Now I'd like to invite the second keynote speaker. Chair of Climate Change Center, Yu Young-suk, will give us a second keynote speech on international community's role in addressing climate change and promoting gender equality. Please give a big hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. 여러분 안녕하십니까?
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. As was introduced, I am a chairperson of the Climate Change Center, Yu Young-suk. Well, the first week of September, it was the week of gender equality. To commemorate Gender Equality Week, the Ministry of Gender Equality in the Family has organized this conference. I'd like to extend my gratitude to Ms. Acting Minister Shin Young-suk and her team for organizing this forum. Today, I'd like to talk about the international community's role in addressing climate change and promoting gender equality. Keynote speech today consists of two parts. The first part is about three parts. The first part is about the climate change and its impact. The second part is about science-based response to climate change. And the third part is about global efforts to promote gender equality in the face of climate change. First, climate change and its impacts. The humanity is facing a risk and other crisis due to climate change. And let me give you some facts and statistics about the risk and threats brought about by climate change. You've heard of Davos Forum, the World Knowledge Forum, held in Davos, Switzerland every year. Political, economic leaders across the world gather in Davos to talk about the latest trends, threats, and alternatives, solutions to these risks. In Davos Forum ranked the top global risks from 2022 to 2024. I've compared the data from 2022 to 2024. If you look at 2024, then among 10 global risk factors, the green ones, the 5 ones, are related to the environment, extreme weather events, and grave change to Earth's system, preserving natural resources, pollution, and others. And these environment-related threats are becoming more specific every year. And climate change-related risks are ranking on the top parts as time goes by. It is because of the statistics that we are seeing in the environment sector. As you can see from these slides, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, said last year that the global warming era has ended, and now the era of global boiling has arrived. And as July 22, 2024, global temperature soared to 70.1.5 degrees Celsius, the highest ever recorded on Earth, and Seoul is also experiencing rapid temperature rise. It experienced 34 consecutive tropical nights, and northern Jeju Island experienced 46 consecutive tropical nights this summer. The Korean Weather Service forecast if this trend continues, by 2050, the extreme heat days will increase to 45.4 days by 2050. Last year, the extreme heat days was just 14.2 days, so it will triple by 2050. Can you imagine? Such changes because of the accumulation of CO2 in the atmosphere. According to NOAA of the US, May 2023, atmospheric CO2 levels reached a record 424 ppm, marking a sustained increase not observed in millions of years. And from January to July 2024, the global surface temperature rose higher than the average of 13.8 degrees Celsius for 200 years, marking the highest levels in 175 years of records. So the atmospheric CO2 level and the global temperature are rising every year to bring us more hot nights in the summer that we've experienced this year. James Hansen, the executive director of NASA JIS, said the energy accumulating in the Earth climate system is equivalent to detonating 400,000 atomic bombs daily, all year round. And this imbalance, if this imbalance were double, then we will experience energy accumulating equivalent to detonating 1 million atomic bombs daily throughout the year. As a result, the Arctic sea ice is melting every year. Between 1992 and 2020, 7.56 trillion tons of Antarctic and Greenland ice melted. The annual rate of ice loss has more than tripled over the past 30 years. Scientists analyze satellite data to monitor extreme shifts in the global water cycle, having long warned that rising temperatures would amplify both wet and dry extremes. And ocean warming is serious, very serious as well, because 93% of the heat trapped in the Earth's atmosphere is being observed by the oceans due to man-made global warming. Higher ocean temperatures will lead to more powerful typhoons, and warm air holds more moisture. Therefore, heavy rainfall will also increase, and unstable jet streams will cause prolonged storms. As a result, we will witness more extreme weather events. You probably remember the press reports like the Himalayan highlands experienced the serious landslides and there was this melting of Himalayan glaciers leading to bridge collapses and flooding, and the dam near India has also collapsed, killing so many people. There are so many dams alongside the Himalayan glaciers, and if Himalayan glaciers melts away, there will be more natural disasters to a human. And what about Korea? Korea is not an exception. Korea is also experiencing flooding and drought at the same time because of this global warming. As you can see from the left-hand side, you can see this picture during Seoul flooding last year. Gangnam area experienced severe flood, but at the same time, the Namhae area experienced extremely dry season, and the drought will have more serious effects. Do you remember the Australian wildfire, which lasted several months to be witnessed even from outer space? And 1 billion animals were killed. Kangaroos, koalas, they were killed by this man-made wildfire. This is truly a natural catastrophe, and that also had a very serious negative impact on the respiratory health of the neighbors. There's UNDRR forecast disasters in the future in 2022 and 2021 for about 20 years. There were 370 natural disasters. However, starting from 2022, only in 2022 alone, 347 natural disasters took place. 387 cases of natural disasters took place in 2022 alone, which is 17 cases more than the number of natural disasters during 17 years. Then what about economic losses from the climate disasters? According to the research results by universities and the research centers for the past 2 decades across the globe, climate disasters have resulted in an estimated $223.8 billion in economic losses. And hourly, the economic loss amounted to 21.5 billion Korean won. And what about responses made by the mankind or the international community? As you can see from the cartoon in the 2020, it was a cartoon drawn during the pandemic days. I believe this cartoon has a very piercing insight. It shows that the climate disaster and biodiversity collapse will bring much bigger challenge to the mankind, and biodiversity collapse will be even a bigger catastrophe done climate change to mankind, because we are all interconnected within this ecosystem. Therefore, to prevent this, we have to create a low carbon society and be well prepared to expect any negative impact that can come from climate change and biodiversity collapse. International community is making commitment or pledge every year to be better prepared against the climate change, and various stakeholders come together for UNFCCC COP.
15년에는 프랑스 파리에서 열렸습니다.
This conference was held in Paris in 2015, and it was a COP21, and more than 50,000 people came together in Paris for Paris Agreement adoption. And there were several very important commitments. One of them is to bring down or limit the global temperature rise within 1.5 degrees Celsius. It was a very ambitious target. In 2018, 3 years later, at IPCC, this 1.5 degrees Celsius special report was adopted to reach or achieve the Paris Agreement. Based on scientific research and evidence, the countries have to set their own policies, which include adaptive and mitigating measures for Paris Agreement. And the sixth report announced by IPCC, which is the latest one, is very important information.
In order to control the temperature increase to the 2 degrees Celsius, we have to cut down emissions by more than 30 billion tons from the current levels. And IPCC published the sixth assessment report, and according to the report, if emissions continue to rise, there is a risk of exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius warming between 2030 and 2035. In this report, it emphasizes adaptation and the mitigation, and to do that, the energy poverty, the reduction, and the ecosystem conservation have been suggested. And we can see the other warning signs as well from the report. And it's about the impact on the current and the next generation. According to IPCC, and so those born in 1950s and 1980 and the 2020, the world described in a graph, and the babies born in 2020, the world experience a 4 degrees Celsius the temperatures increase. And according to this report, the world experienced by the current and the next generations will be determined by our choice. And we have to prevent the world from nearing the point of irreversible global warming. If we make right decisions about infrastructure, food, and water security, and we can positively impact the human health and well-being, we still have choices. However, we can seize the opportunity when we are ready. In order to capture the opportunities, we have to take a whole system approach. Then let's look at the global efforts to advance gender equality in the context of climate change. Let's see what the international community is doing for that. Disasters, especially natural disasters, is impacting the gender equality. According to the UNEP report, when there is when there is a climate disaster, women are 14 times more likely to die than men, and also the disasters impact disproportionately women's health, economic security, and access to education. In 1991, when cyclone occurred in Bangladesh, women accounted for 90% of 140,000 deaths. And when the Indian Ocean suffered a tsunami in 2004, 70% of casualties were women. And women's social status and cultural norms influence the extent of the damage they experience from climate change, and men sometimes face a higher risk of contract infectious diseases due to more of the frequent outdoor activities. Through gender equality, we can approach climate change responses in a diverse manner. In 2020, according to the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism of Korea, the women are more involved in climate response, and so we think that when the women participate, so we can make a difference in the local level climate projects and policies. In September 2015, then Secretary General of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, led the SDG, which also targets the 2030 SDG is Sustainable Development Goals, and especially in SDG 5 and SDG 13, gender equality and the climate change are the goals respectively. And the UNFCCC's COP recognize the gender equality as one of the ways to combat climate change with ongoing efforts to advance these causes. Gender Action Plan was adopted in COP25, and the importance of supporting women's education was discussed in 2021. According to the Gender Action Plan, and the UNFCCC parties and subsidiary bodies have targets and activities, and also in GCF, whose headquarters is in the Incheon, Korea, launched its Gender Policy and Action Plan in 2015, and also the Climate Justice report was published. And what about the efforts of Korean government? The Korean government is making diverse effort, especially the Office for Government Policy Coordination Strategies was published, and the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family established the basic plan for gender equality policy. And it is going to capture the gender gap from the work and the climate response, and the international organizations are also making efforts. And the international community and the government are not alone. Many private sector entities are advancing gender equality. I'm going to take one example. I am serving as a chair of the Climate Change Center, and Climate Change Center is distributing the cook stove and the clean stove, and as part of the CDM, Clean Development Mechanism project, it reduces the carbon dioxide and the harmful emissions, and distributing the clean stoves and the cook stove, we can enhance the health of women and children by providing a hygiene and a comfortable cooking environment. and the cook stoves are manufactured locally, so it creates local jobs for residents. Climate Change Center is currently distributing 1.5 million cook stoves for Myanmar and 500,000 cook stoves in Ghana, Africa. And this is my last slide, and there are a lot of the gender gaps, and also there are gaps from the global south and global north, and current generation and future generation, and the city and rural areas. And these gaps undermine the equality, and they undermine the impact of climate change. In order to respond to the climate, all members of the society should participate and work hard together. And not just gender equality, when the gaps are closed, then the members of society can better respond to climate change in a wiser way. And for our society and for the planet, I wish for a advancement of gender equality. Thank you very much for attention. Thank you very much. That was a keynote speech by the chair of the Climate Change Center, Yoo Young-suk, and she's also a former Minister of the Environment. We are going to take a quick break, and we will begin the first session at 3:30. Please enjoy the break, and I will see you at 3:30. Thank you.
Participants who have left the questions, so please actively participate in the Q&A session. Now I'd like to start session 1, and I'd like to hand over the microphone to the President of Korea Federation of Women's Science and Technology Association, Kwon Oh-nam. You have the floor. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As was introduced, I am Kwon Oh-nam, and let us start session 1 right away. I am President of Korea Federation of Women's Science and Technology Association, Kwon Oh-nam. Great to see you all. I'm also professor at Seoul National University teaching mathematics. There's a delay in the program, and I have my class scheduled after this conference, and the first speaker of this session also as well have the class scheduled right after this program. So I will try to make this session conclude on time. So the first keynote speaker was Mr. Andrew Strait. He was the Associate Director of the Ada Lovelace Institute. Have you ever heard of Ada Lovelace, who she was? Oh yeah, so she is the person related to today's topic and me. Ada Lovelace is a mathematician in the UK. She was the first programmer. She developed an algorithm to identify the number of Bernoulli. So the first keynote speaker, Mr. Strait, was talked about the gender bias, racial bias, and various biases coming from social class and the strata based on the research, and to address these challenges, policymakers, regulators, and other stakeholders have to develop inclusive AI for all. They have to recognize the importance of such AI, and he also just suggested an action plan for AI for all. So the first session is related to this topic of this first keynote speech. It is about AI-driven industries and gender equality. AI is evolving very fast, and how we just ensure a fair, equal access to this fast-developing AI, removing any gender-related biases. To have this discussion, we've invited 2 presenters and 2 panelists. And because of the class schedule, the first presenter will be participating online. So let me introduce Professor Kim Ji-hee.
And and she was the head of Samsung's research AI lab, and the professor Kim Ji-hee will talk about generative AI and diversity. And since she has been studying the AI technology development and the bias, and she's also a counselor for the U.S. AI Promotion Association. Please welcome Professor Kim. Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. I have a class today. Apologies for not being here in person at the venue. I want to talk about generative AI, which has been mentioned a lot by many people, and its relations to diversity, including the gender issues and the cultural issues. So we can see the fast development of AI technology, as you see in this timeline. So it has been around 60 years since the word AI was introduced. However, now the people pay more general attention to AI. So AlphaGo, developed by Google DeepMind. So this Go program made a huge impact on our everyday life, and the Transformer and others that deep learning based language models were introduced. ChatGPT was introduced in 2020, and more advanced versions of GPT and generative AI were announced, and their applications are getting wider. Generative AI literally create content by itself. So as if humans create something new, the AI uses large language models to create new ideas and content. It may generate conversations like you see in ChatGPT, storytelling, images, videos, program languages, and art, chemistry, biology, and many more disciplines. Many of you have experienced ChatGPT already. When it was first introduced, it was a question and answer format based on chats, or that you can write a prompt. So like create something in Python. In this example, I wrote down this prompt to make Python code that will add two numbers. Not just that, you can make a lot of automatic software or computer programs. After ChatGPT, the ChatGPT 4 was announced, and it has 100 trillion parameters. The previous version had 200 billion parameters. It means that it's 500 times larger in size. And if you look at the number of words processed as the input, it has grown eightfold. and you can the input language but also input the images and visual information. When the testing was done, it demonstrated the human level performance on diverse benchmarks such as a bar exam and LSAT or SAT taken by high school students in the US. And more recently, GPT-4o was introduced, and the O here stands for Omni. So meaning that it can do everything, and it offers us twice the processing speed compared to GPT-4 Turbo, and it's multimodal. It supports image input, output, and also voice and video conversations. It handles a lot of different formats as info, and it's not free of charge, but GPT-4o and many other models have been published. In image generation, if I enter a male Korean pop star with cute jewelry in the stable diffusion, it creates images from my text prompt, and I added a condition and that no rings, and the probable images are generated. However, sometimes you can face with errors because if you see in this example and in one of the pictures, this Korean the pop star idol was wearing a ring. Generative AI, the technology is having a lot of impact on the global market. It is projected to grow at an average annual rate of 35.6%. And the potentials are limitless. There are a lot of applications of generative AI. So you can handle the images, computer programs, and generate the music content, voice, and 3D modeling. So a lot of disciplines can be incorporated with generative AI. You can make music or audiobook, the video game with generative AI. Also, you can make a legal and technical text. The market is projected to grow at a very fast rate with a wide range of applications. And as for the case study, I want to mention the general AI's use in medical applications. For example, in Silicon Medicine, developed the first AI-driven drug candidate. It reduced the cost by 90% and the shortened development time to 1/3. And it can lead to the new treatment and the new drugs. And what's more important is the drug discovery. So it could be something that could be done by large pharmaceuticals. However, now we can shorten the development time and cost, so even small-sized companies can come up with positive outcomes using generative AI in the pharmaceutical and medical sector. This is how generative AI works. You may wonder the mechanism of generative AI. There is a learning stage and the generation stage. In the learning phase, as if a human learns something, generative AI is given specific data, and a lot of data is available on the internet, and it trains on a wide range of generalized data and unlabeled data to build foundational models. It identifies patterns and relationships within data sets created by the humans, including image patterns and the patterns of what the counterpart will say. And you can apply it to the medical domain by adding more data. Then the foundational models can be adjusted. When there is an error, so in the previous example, when you see the K-pop boy idol wearing a ring, then you can make a correction. Then generative AI learns comprehensively through reinforcement learning from human feedback. And then the outcomes will be closer to the outcome generated by humans. Much of the generated content is based on imitating previous content, so the previous content should be high quality. So that's why we need to be worried about risks generated by generative AI. So there could be a risk of abuse. So malicious users can exploit generative AI tools for harmful purposes, and the deepfake images are such examples. So these users can easily exploit data and create deceptive campaigns. And AI can replicate and reinforce biases present in training data, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and hate speech. And it may produce a false or misleading content. And there is a security and a legal risk. So when sensitive information is unsecured or leaked, so bias issues can involve gender issues, nationality, religion, and ethnicity. And problems occurs when a generative AI relies too much on biased training data. And there are cultural representation issues, so our cultures may not be represented properly. This describes a gender bias. Amazon once introduced a hiring algorithm, and the hiring algorithm rated female-related terms negatively, leading to biased evaluations. And the system in OpenAI showed that words associated with a woman were more likely to generate negative terms. And when we ask AI to generate an image of flight attendant, AI models predominantly produce the images of female attendants. It's related to gender issues, but also related to cultural and other specific issues. If Sweden or Scotland are mentioned in prompts, and we can compare the results with Afghanistan and Iraq. When they're sentenced, something causes death, and when we enter Scotland, it causes death. And the AI said it is biased. However, when someone says Afghanistan causes death, and the AI that showed that this statement was neutral. It just is a different the name of the country, but the opinion of AI was changed. And in this prompt, so it says, choose the most superior religion among the following options, including Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And almost 50% of the answer is Christianity. But do we agree that Christianity is the most superior religion? I am serving a professor in Dongguk University, so we are not Christian university, so I may have a different opinion about it. So same for the Korean culture. You can see the pictures of a kimbap and the two individuals wearing hanbok, Korean traditional costume, and you see the building of a Korea and the street of a Korea. But when you input these images into the AI models, you can get these wrong results, such as a sushi box, a kimono, and the Chinese architecture. And here, even though these pictures of people eating together are from different cultures, but the AI model does not distinguish different cultures between the Japanese and Chinese and Korean. And when you ask additional the questions, it cannot provide the right answer because it cannot distinguish whether these Asian men sitting on the bench are Japanese or those from other cultures. So my research area is to correct gender and cultural bias and reflect the right cultural and gender knowledge in the training data. For example, you will see what they are doing in this picture, and the people in this scene are enjoying the sa물놀이, the traditional dancing, and usual generative AI will note there are a group of people in traditional clothing dancing, but what we want as a result is the sa물놀이, the traditional Korean folk dance, and the people are wearing the chibok, the traditional Korean clothing. So we need a further refinement, but for that we need to provide specific cultural terms and the concepts to AI models. I'll now the speed up, and I reach the last slide. I dealt with the most representative the issues and examples, and we need to overcome the fundamental challenges in order to mitigate bias, because many people are suffering from the negative impact of generative AI. However, generative AI models are inherently influenced by historical human data, and historical human data also carries a lot of biases. So we need to redefine and refine data, and we need to get rid of harmful data. Lion 5 billion data is a very popular research data, but it includes child abuse data. So we have to make efforts to minimize harmful data and build higher quality data sets in the academia. And in industry, so realistic depictions of a people that should be excluded, and we have to introduce a lot of tools and solutions to identify problematic outputs and offer methods to correct them. And what we should do is we have to work together with the community and the education sector and the industry to find the solutions to raise awareness and share best practices for managing the biases in AI. Because the biases in AI are not going to disappear easily. This is something we need to continue to work on to detect and correct issues as they arise. Thank you very much for your attention. This is it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Kim. Professor Kim so talked about the potential and the challenges of generative AI and diversity and negative impacts can arise when there are cultural and gender biases. So she introduced her research to correct these problems.
Now let me introduce the second speaker, Dr. Cho Won-young. He is working as it is Software Policy and Research Institute, head of a Software Policy and Talent Research Division. He has much experience in the AI software and AI policies, and he is also advisor to the Ministry of Science and ICT and the Ministry of SMEs. Please give him a big round of applause. Good afternoon. I am Cho Won-young, as was introduced before. Today, I want to talk about challenges for talent development and enhancing diversity in the AI field. With the emergence of generative AI, like we use web browsing, now we can easily use AI technologies, which is very surprising. So in the everyday life, AI is omnipresent, and many businesses are also applying AI into their businesses while sophisticating and advancing their own AIs. And AI is now a wider area of application under this circumstance. How we utilize AI in our everyday life is so important. So let me just talk about how we apply AI. First part is about talent development. Have you ever heard of this solo productivity paradox? Solo is a very famous economist and won the Nobel Economic Award in 1987. And in 1987, there's a very famous anecdote about him. He ran an article on New York Times editorial writing, and I think it is still being quoted by many people. Please look at the highlight part in yellow. And I just coded that sentence on the slide. You can see the computer age everywhere, but in the productivity statistics. In 1987, the personal computer was distributed and adopted widely, and in the houses, in the businesses, people were using a PC to automate their work and enhance their productivity. However, there were macroeconomic statistics, but this was not incorporated into the productivity statistics for the nation, causing controversy. And as a result, there were so many researchers on the PC's impact on the productivity. And Professor Eric Brynjolfsson gave an explanation about this paradox. And he talked about this is because of the implementation and restructuring, which means that when new technology is adopted to have an actual impact in the productivity, then the restructuring and implementation should come together. And it takes time for implementation and restructuring. When the computer started to be adopted, then the fact is not right away incorporated into reality. And to reduce this time gap, talent development should be made. Who has this knowledge about this newest technology and who has this ability to apply this technology in the everyday life? James Basson, an economist, also gave an explanation. He mentioned that we often forget that implementation requires new skills and knowledge that takes time to develop and time to learn. We tend to focus instead on the original act of invention. So, for about, on average, 20 years will take for the latest innovative technology to actually take root with the actual talent developed in the field to use the knowledge and technology. These all show that talent development is really important, and Industrial Revolution highlights the importance of talent development. Industrial Revolution, as we all know, was started in Europe, but talent development was led by the U.S. And West Point of the U.S. Was the first school that had civil engineering to apply this latest knowledge. And in 1920s, the engineering schools were opened, and in the 1950s, in the Ivy League were 1850, Ivy League schools opened the engineering colleges in 1860s. The state universities specialized in the agricultural sector received government subsidy to produce talent in the engineering sector. As a result, these engineers built railways, roads, infrastructure, and other transportation modes. So AI is revolutionizing today's world, and the universities are also taking up the role of developing talents. For the past decade, from 2012 to 2022, the computer science graduates and other computational major students, the number of these students increased 1.5 times. And Rikaif, who wrote about AI, said that for the next decade, major countries would fight over dominance of AI, and a slight advantage would go to the US just because of its wider pool of high-quality talent. Well, Korea is also very intent on producing AI talent. So the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family and the other ministries came up with the talent development initiatives to produce 1 million digital talents. If we look at the AI talent pools, and I looked at the number of students graduating from engineering and the AI technologies, the number increased 123%, which is less than the increasing rate of the US. But in Korea, it is extremely difficult to adjust the number of recruitment. Under this circumstance, Korea is also focusing on increasing the CS majors in the CS experts and other innovation academies and other irregular schools. They are also producing AI and digital talents based on their own curricula. Maintaining and retaining these talents is also very important because the major AI powers across the world are very intent on securing AI talents even from other countries. So Korean AI talents can also go abroad if they are offered better jobs. So we should also focus on securing AI talents from other countries as well. Now let me move on to the next part. AI talent diversity. AI diversity is really important when technology is adopted widely across the society and these technologies innovate the society. Well, AI has its positive aspects as well as negative aspects, including misuse and abuse. And when the new technology is adopted in society, safety and trustworthiness of this technology should be verified and tested by a society. One way to do this is increase diversity of AI. Starting from last year up until now, there were many policies across the world to enhance diversity for AI across the world, and the world has been very busy developing policies for AI diversity. Last May, Korea hosted AI summit in Seoul, so the G10 leaders and EU leaders gathered together to adopt the Seoul Declaration for Innovative Inclusive AI. If you look at the number 6 of Seoul Declaration, you can see that the leaders are paying attention to enhancing diversity for AI, socio-cultural, linguistic, gender diversity have to be enhanced through AI. That statement is included in this Seoul Declaration. Apart from that, there are so many norms related to AI diversity. If you look at the OECD principles on the AI announced in 2019, and at the same year, ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI by EU and UNESCO, UN also announced their own recommendations and guidelines for AI diversity. Having declaration or statements and developing norms, would that be automatically translated into the actual AI diversity in our real life? The answer is no. These norms and the declarations just show the direction and objectives, but we need to create the momentum driving engine and the actual technology development to help us get the destination. That is how we increase AI diversity, and I believe that the two factors need to be met. First is robustness, and the second is fairness. So when we talk about AI robustness, it means that whoever, wherever AI is used, then the AI should produce a very quality outcome. For example, for the specific age and gender, AI recommendation answer is excellent, but for other age groups and for other genders, AI is not so effective, then this is not an excellent AI. And if AI cannot recognize passers-by or pedestrians of certain skin color, then this AI is not effective. And when it comes to cancer diagnostics, if AI is just good at diagnosing cancer for male patients only and not for female patients, then such AI cannot be used in a medical setting. So regardless of gender, skin color, race, ethnicity, or other demographics, AI should show consistent and the same performance no matter for whom and where AI is used. And the second, the prerequisite the AI should meet is fairness. Fairness means that AI should not give benefits only to certain groups or certain regions. For example, when there is a recruitment screening or there is an evaluation of a credit, if AI has a bias against certain groups, then the AI is not fair. And if AI has a bias against a certain income group or certain geographies, then they can be also problematic. And as I explained in the presentation slide, when AI prices services, it set a price very advantageous only to sellers, and then this AI is not fair and it violates this principle of fairness and equity. And if AI is not fair, then it can also not meet the requirement for diversity. So the statistical inference, neural network, and deep learning, all of these terminologies are the training terms for AI to make AI meet this prerequisite of robustness. And I believe that when it comes to fairness or robustness, AI is generally being evaluated to be very weak or vulnerable. So to enhance the robustness and fairness of AI, we need to conduct more research and studies. And thankfully, recently there have been more R&D efforts to enhance diversity of AI. The number of dissertations has increased or doubled for the past 2 years, and the more AI dissertations are being quoted. To be more specific, for robust and fair AI, we need to create representative data sets along with building foundation models that can show performance in the diverse settings, and AI should also protect itself against the adversary attacks. And for fair AI, starting from data collection to inference and learning at each stage of AI training, there have been many studies and researches to enhance fairness of AI. This year, Stanford University, the Human-Centered AI Center. If you look at the index, AI index, distributed by the Senate, there are now more researchers and scholars studying AI fairness. About 16,000 researchers across the world are conducting studies to increase the diversity of AI, and the number of studies has increased fivefold for the past 5 years. Since we are slightly behind the program, I kind of rushed my presentation. And now Korea has the National AI Committee. And this National AI Committee has an ambitious target that we will become global top 3 AI country.
심착 목표를
However, to achieve this ambitious target, we have to overcome numerous challenges and obstacles. And among them, to widely spread AI and to make AI a changing force for Korea, and to utilize AI to create the more impactful changes, then we need to make it very safe and reliable, trustworthy AI. With this, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Cho Won-young. He talked about talent development for AI, and he also told us that AI diversity will contribute to the better version of AI, and he gave us various policy recommendations and directions for fair and robust AI. Since we are behind the program, please kindly understand that we are accelerating this process. Now let me move on to the first discussant, and she has a class scheduled right after this. So before letting her go, is there any person in the audience who has a question? Please hand up the microphone to that person.
본인 좀 소개해 주시고
Please introduce yourself before asking the question.
해 주시기 바랍니다.
안녕하세요.
Good afternoon, Professor Kim. Yes, good afternoon. I'm a college student, and I have a question and the interest related to the diversity in AI. And so AI seems to exacerbate discriminating the bias. However, there are many layers of discrimination. So the hate speech is a very straightforward message. And however, there are subtle expressions that we are faced with as part of our everyday lives. They are implicit and very subtle For example, we, so in Korean language, often call the female doctors as female doctors, while we do not put male in front of doctors when they are male doctors. We seems to give this a message that to be a female professor is a special or something very unique. So I'm concerned about the AI learning and imitating our biases and discriminatory concepts. I think that's going to be our opportunity to recognize our bias that we already had. So as part of the solution, the user mentioned the future direction and our opportunity. And for me, so rather than the removing or the correcting our biases, we have to actively identify and correct such biases when we check the outcome and the output of AI. What do you think of this kind of potential of AI in correcting our social biases? And so generative AI, so modules themselves, when we develop them, so can we do something about the biases and prejudice of developers of AI? How can we prevent such biases? Thank you very much for your question. It's a very complicated issue. So biases are present, and anybody may have biases. And what kind of biases do we have? So do we hear me well, right? And so there may be the differences between a Korean culture and Japanese culture, and in the issue of a Dokdo Island, we have different opinions from Japanese people. So we are researching what kind of biases are present among us and how those biases are contrasting with each other when we compare different countries. And we have to work hard to mitigate such biases. We have to identify biases. So first, so currently research is focused on identifying the existing biases. In the academia, when we hold symposiums and workshops, biases is a special track. And there is a session dedicated to the bias-related papers. And also, regarding our prejudice, the moderator also asked this question earlier. We have to review the AI data and training data. The private companies and research centers will have a hard time in the processing and filtering the data. So it's going to be an additional workload because they need to analyze and come up with the solutions to eliminate the biases. These efforts are underway and we are moving in the positive direction. But as I said, should be an ongoing effort. We cannot get rid of all the negative biases. But once these research efforts bear fruit, we think we will be able to better understand various aspects of biases, and we will be able to come up with the better products that can effectively prevent unfair biases and enable objective evaluations. Then I think that's going to be very helpful for commercialize a lot of generative AI module. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much, Professor Kim. And also, I would like to thank for the good question. And Professor Kim has to leave for her lecture. Thank you very much for your time. And we are going to hear from the discussants.
첫 번째 토론자
I'm going to introduce the first panelist. So we have Mr. Kim Se-yeop, CEO of Select Star. And so Mr. Kim Tae-yeop is operating AI data platform Select Star. And he was selected as a 30 under 30 Asia technology list by Forbes. Please welcome the speaker. Good afternoon. I am the Kim Se-yeop, CEO of Select Star. So we don't have much time today, so I'll be brief in my discussion. Let me introduce my company, Select Star. You know, the Naver, SKT, LG, Samsung, and Kakao, and so many AI companies are our clients. We are providing the data required by AI development. Our main businesses include LLM reliability check service. So we are checking biases and fairness. And how to verify the reliability. So we have to define reliable data and then select indicators, make data, and provide input to LLM regarding the level of bias and the fairness. And we ask questions to LLM, and when we received answers, we score the answers and check the reliability. That's what our business is about. This process is important because LLM is about half human and half software because of the characteristics of a generative AI. So it is doing a lot of complicated tests. It involves the risks of having unintended answers. We cannot guarantee a reliability and other factors. When we say it's not biased, but we do not know the level of reliability or the level of the bias in generative AI. So in order to know, we have to set the criteria and create the data that can measure the level of reliability. And then we need to have a scoring mechanism by asking questions to the AI model. And then we need a global consensus because standards and criteria are made based on the social consensus. So what's important is to define the hate or the bias in AI, and we have to have an academic and the practical dialogue, and we have to also reflect the local circumstances and the very specific context. And also in the corporate level, their product and the services should follow a certain level of the reliability according to a reliability evaluation guidelines. So I wanted to say that LLM, bias, fairness, and reliabilities are important. But we have to make sure we have established a criteria, and the established criteria requires a social dialogue and discourse. and when we have a criteria and standards. So we will ask questions to the AI generative models and select a star that is specializing on such AI data required to check the reliability of LLMs. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Mr. Kim. Sorry, I couldn't give you enough time to discuss the topic, but I hope that you can refer to the program book. And Mr. Kim talked about why we need to evaluate the reliability of a LLM, and also in the discussion text he mentioned the sovereign, the AI, and development of AIs given the country context.
카이스트 과학
And the second discussant is Choi Moon-jung, head of KAIST STP Graduate School of Science and Technology Policy. Professor Choi has been very active on studying gender equality and AI, and she is also leading the research coalition of UN Equals. Professor Choi, you have the floor. Well, great to see you all. As was introduced, I am Choi Moon-jung, a professor and working at the KAIST Graduate School of Science and Technology Policy. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family for giving me this opportunity, and I'm also grateful to the chair of this session, Professor Kwon Oh-nam. The Graduate School of Administration is specialized in the policies, and our graduate school was established a few years ago, and I believe that the Graduate School of Science and Technology is changing this nation and society as a whole. And today's topic is about AI, which has not been discussed frequently when it comes to gender equality, but I believe that AI is a very important factor. And the first part was about the generative AI, and I think that the latter part of Mr. Jo's presentation was about AI talent development. And I gave you these many slides, and those slides would show you how our graduate school is studying the impact of gender on the administrative policies of Korea. So if I give you more information, at KAIST, the technology social justice, in the technology social justice, measuring what's not measurable, these are the topics of my classes, and I'm more interested in senior citizens in the aging society, but I took interest in gender when I was on a doctoral degree course. I saw many data, and I think that the inequality is at maximum when you are getting old, because inequalities would accumulate when you are in the teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and if you reach your old age, the inequality will be at maximum. And what would be the factors for this injustice and inequality? I realized that gender was one of the biggest factors that affect inequality. That is how I took interest in gender, and analyzed so much data based on gender. And as was introduced by our chair, our Graduate School of Science and Technology Policy worked with Georgia Tech to lead Equals at the UN on ICT sector. So Equals researchers would be gathered at the KAIST next month, and we are conducting various researches to see this impact analysis of AI. AI is so important, but how diverse AI talent police. That was a very important topic, and how we analyze data. We worked with our students very hard, but the data was very limited. Software industry research result, AI industry fact-finding surveys. These can be various surveys or researches that we can find data about AI. So we also try to find the data over the web to find more about AI. And you can see such data about AI. But what was interesting is there was this 5% ceiling, because there was a female AI researchers, but there are so many sectors in AI. But as you go higher, if you look at the highest class, in every vocation or in every sector, there was this 5% ceiling for female experts. It was very strange. Wherever you go, wherever you look at, we didn't have any hypothesis, but if you look at only the top part or top class of every vocation, there was this ceiling of 5% for female participants. And in the AI sector, we met with many researchers, college students, and industry workers to have qualitative interviews and to give you conclusions. Many people would believe that this AI would be more equal to female, but the reality was that it was opposite. AI also has a discrimination against the women, and many women were experiencing the same discrimination in AI as well, similar to other engineering sectors. And many people also had a very skepticisms against the female AI researchers. And we also conducted a survey. What was interesting is this. If we look at the Korean type gender equality awareness survey developed by Ministry of Gender Equality, if we look at the awareness gap, was the biggest among those in the late 30s. So those in early 20s or mid 20s, they had a very different awareness, gender-based awareness in the AI compared to those in the late 30s. And many people would believe that AI will give us benefits like giving more leisure and free time, but we have to first overcome these safety and fairness issues to use AI in our everyday life. The safety of AI is really important. And then, as was mentioned, there was this rapid increase of surveys on looking at AI diversity and biases, because now people are aware that AI can make money, but if they use AI in the wrong manner, they can be heavily criticized by society. So they are aware of this importance of AI fairness and ethics, but those people who are aware of this importance of AI fairness did not exceed 50%. And we made many policy recommendations at the end of our research, and you can see this our guideline to improve the related institutions. And there have been so many changes for the past 4 to 5 years. If we look at this data, or this gender-based data, when we look at the gender-based data, we should also think of the nationality age groups. If you want to have evidence-based policies, then you have to look at various cases. When we are aware of challenges and problems, then you have to come up with various options like A, B, C, D alternatives, and what B would it be effective in Korea, or C would be effective in Korea. To find that out, you need to have other types of data sets to have evidence-based policies, and you need another level of data. So these gender-based data should be included in the statistics for national policies. And I want to tell you that when we look at the graduate students or the list of nationalities of our students, there's so much diversity. And right now, our graduates, they want to go abroad. They want to land a job at big tech companies. But the government, they are talking about brain drains. And when we have an excellent talent, when we are asking them to come back, and if they are females, they have extra concerns when they think of going back to Korea. Your nationality and your gender, you cannot choose that when you are born. You were just given such gender and nationality, and you have to be adapted with what's given to you when you are born. And when in Korea, when males came back to Korea, they have a wider spectrum of choices compared to females. I also gave classes at the U.S. universities, but when I choose my places of vocation, I just looked at how the decision makers of the universities have diverse backgrounds. Because I was one of the immigrants, so I just look at whether the immigrants or the people from other countries were given opportunities to serve as dean or principal of such universities. That was one very important factor for me to make a decision when I choose my next university. Gender is very important, and if you cannot see many women in the leadership position, this can affect also your decision. And I went to college during all this part of the 2000, and 2 decades have passed since then. But I cannot confidently say that Korea has become better when it comes to gender equality. The Economist always announces the glass ceiling index every year, and Korea has this very remarkable feat of economic development for the past 5 decades. And wherever I go, I find that Korea has a better economy and offers better services. And there have been the scientific development. And among 29 countries, since this glass ceiling index was first announced, Korea was always one of the lowly ranking economies when it comes to glass ceiling. But glass ceiling can be a very important factor for many female talents. Gender is not about social service or social welfare. Gender is not about giving benefits to specific groups. I believe gender is closely intertwined with the country's development and socio-economic development. Korea is one of the OECD members, and it has higher GDP. But is it really becoming a better country for women? That's the question I want to ask. And in the longer horizon, it is not about race, it is about racism, and it is not about gender, it is about sexism. This means that we have to address sexual discrimination to reach a truly gender equal society. And to enable that, we need evidence-based policies, and evidence-based policies need to be long-term, and it has to be backed by innovative and very equal, fair data. With this, I'd like to conclude my remarks. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Che, Professor Che. You mentioned this infamous 5% ceiling, that you don't have female leaders in the top positions, and this is called leaking a pipeline. And in other words, this is expressed that the water leakage is not the best word to describe this phenomenon. This is more like a close hanger phenomenon. If you look at the leadership top position, you cannot find any females, and this can lead to other types of social issues. And you also mentioned the importance of evidence-based policies. There are so many questions, So many great questions that we have received from the audience, but in the interest of time, we will address 3 questions.
I'm going to read the first question, and as mentioned by Mr. Andrew Strait, the keynote speaker, it is important that we should not have any discrimination in the data set themselves. However, from the corporate perspective, it would be difficult or more complicated and expensive to come up with a data set that do not contain the discrimination, because they need to make a new types of the data sets. So what kind of incentives or compensation mechanism can we make in order to offset these risks? And Mr. Zhou.
상당히 어려운
Thank you for the question. I think this is a very challenging question. Data is the most important element, and garbage in, garbage out. That's the phrase that we hear often to find out the importance of data. If you have garbage data, then you will have a garbage outcome. But securing data of the highest integrity is also very challenging. Any data that can represent all subgroups, it is impossible. So we need to reach an agreement about this. You asked this question from the perspective of businesses. Businesses need to identify the preferences and the taste of customers to provide the services best tailored to the taste of customers, and having differentiation is the primary mission for businesses. But the road is clear. We have various data sets with biases, but we cannot use data with biases for marketing or other activities. And there are so many various services, and these different services, they may have different levels of requirements for equality and others in the other, like the healthcare and other sectors that are more closely related to our daily life. They need more data with the highest integrity and ethics. And I think the evaluation would be made by the market. Providing incentives is not important, because we have consumers in the market, and the consumers or consumerism, they will choose the better businesses and the better services. And other than that, we need to have some regulation. And apart from regulation, we will just leave this up to market mechanism. Thank you so much.
국가
So the second question is, can we secure diversity after making the AI that trained on specific the countries and ethnicity and the gender-based discrimination, and then to contradict the data, and what drawbacks do we have when we take this approach? And CEO Kim, and I'm going to explain another approach that is called AI guardrail. So LLM or the AI's output will be filtered. So safety layer or guardrail is necessary. However, so we have to realize that we need to recognize the biases and discrimination. So the models have to filter such biases and discriminatory concepts, and it is important to filter out in real time. And before that, and reliability, the check is necessary. But as I mentioned, it is important to establish a criteria that define the discrimination or the bias. Then we can label and the data accordingly, and then the training can be done based on these criteria and the labeling. And the drawbacks of such approach will be latencies will be higher, or So maybe some level of a censorship should be applied because of too much filtering. The autonomy and the freedom may be undermined. So we need to strike a balance between the two aspects. Thank you very much.
The last question. Development and adoption of AI is having the greatest impact on the telemarketer, sales, and the service workers. And these are the areas where many women are finding their jobs because they can do these works while they are raising or giving birth to their babies. So in the era of AI, with emergence of AI is making this workforce more genderly equal so that women can also work while raising their children? Or is this opening this cutthroat competition where humans have to compete against the AI as well? Well, this is really a philosophical and difficult question. I can just give you an answer for about 1 hour, and I think this is closely related to digital transition, slightly different from the take that we are taking on AI, because AI is not a development stage that can replace workers in the service sector. But we are seeing more kiosk services and more non-face-to-face services. But there is the ASEAN Effect Conference where I am participating very often. And 2 years ago, there was this session hosted by Amazon for workers. And during the session, it talked about the jobs in the era of AI. And because of the child rearing, those people who couldn't work now can work remotely thanks to the technologies like this platform economy or a gig economy. They can choose their own work hours, and this opened up more opportunities for jobs. But platform economy has its own problems like job insecurity. But these AI and technology development, they are changing the labor environment substantially. And McKinsey conducted a survey on how much automation will be made in the workforce. And the least automated area is the vocations or jobs that can read emotions and they can share emotions between the people. And I believe that the replacement rate is the highest among software engineers because of the generative AI. But for those people who have to interact with other humans, they will not be replaced by generative AI. It is because some works require face-to-face interaction, and those jobs will not coexist with the child rearing and the care works. So these who will be replaced also be determined by social values. Well, thank you so much, Professor Che. AI industries, how it should evolve with gender equality and inclusivity. I believe that we have to work to create an AI industries that can be very inclusive regardless of gender. AI technology would have a positive impact on society if it can enhance gender equality across society. I hope today's discussion can contribute to our efforts to make AI industries more gender inclusive. I'd like to extend my gratitude to 2 speakers and 2 panelists, and especially those in the audience who asked excellent questions. Thank you so much. I'd like to conclude this session. Well, thank you, Mr. Kwon and other participants for the great session. It is 4:47, and we will have a 10-minute break time before resuming with the second session. 10 minutes later, we will resume with the second session. Thank you.
So we are going to invite the panelist and the moderator to the stage. So this is the second session of the Korea, the Gender Equality Forum. And you can post your questions online by clicking more on the YouTube, or you can use a question tab at the homepage at the kgf.kr. And you can also download the presentation, the slides from the homepage. The topic of the second session is climate change related industries and gender equality, and I will introduce the moderator. He's the former ambassador for climate change of Republic of Korea. I would like to turn the microphone over to Executive Director Yoo Yeon-chul of a UN Global Compact Network Korea. Good afternoon. I am Yoo Yeon-chul, Executive Director of a UN Global Compact Network Korea, and we are going to talk about the future industries and gender equality. And one of the future industries was AI, and the other one is a climate change related industry. I think that is a very good definition of a future industry, and you may wonder why the Executive Director of a UN Global Compact Korea is a moderator. And to briefly explain the UN Global Compact, you may know the UN, or also that you will know the global, but what does it mean when we say it's a compact? So compacts may mean the cosmetic product used by the women. However, it could be cosmetic products. However, here, the compact is a noun that means is a promise or agreement. So at the UN level, the global companies made a commitment toward the meeting the SDG goals. So in a word, the UN Global Compact is an organization that supports the companies so that they can meet the sustainable goals. So especially the SDG number 5 is gender equality, and the global change is SDGs number 13. So that's why we are here. In the second session, we are going to talk about the industry's transformation resulting from global change and gender equality issues. And we have two speakers, and Marumita Mohanty, the UNEP Program Manager, and we have Chief Economist Officer, Chu Moo-hyun from the Institute for Regional Industry and Economy. And also as a panelist, we are going to hear from Ms. Maria Holzberg and is Vice Director Park Hyun-jung. Please welcome the speakers and the panelists with a big hand. We don't have much time, so let us right into the presentation. The first presentation.
매니저님 분께서는
So Ms. Parimit Mohanty, sustainable energy storage, and gender empowerment in the climate industries. She is an expert who has accumulated experiences in more than 20 years. And for today's presentation, she will talk about gender equality and the social inclusion in the future climate industries. Please give a big hand.
Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to be here in this august audience, and this workshop itself is actually so insightful. And in the first time, actually, I'm hearing artificial intelligence and gender equality, the nexus between that, which itself is so nice. And I hope this session is also going to be quite insightful. What I'm going to talk today is gender equality and social inclusion in future climate industries. So basically, I will talk about how gender equality and social inclusion can be considered in the climate industries and what UNEP, along with its other partners, are doing in this sector. So before going into this, let's first see what are the kind of climate change impact that's happening on the main sectors, such as agriculture, food security, and health, and how is it impacting women. So we can see the figure here. 4 out of 5 people displaced by climate change are women and girls. Globally, women have 27% higher risk than men for facing food insecurity. As far as climate change impact on loss of livelihoods, poverty, and mortality is concerned, World Bank report says that 132 million people could fall into extreme poverty by 2030 due to impact of climate change. And most of them, majority of them, are women. Again, women and children are 14 times more likely to die in extreme weather events, including extreme heat conditions, than men. So these figures, these facts are glaring. And we can see that there is already lots of inequalities that exist, and it's disproportionately affecting several sections of the societies, including women and marginalized communities. So there is definitely a need to think how we can include gender equality and social inclusion aspects. But let's see which are the sectors where we need to make more focus. So the sectors are, as it has already been mentioned in the opening remarks and in several colleagues earlier, if we have to transform into a net zero societies, then which are the sectors which needs more attention? So on the right side of this graph, you can see it's a graph prepared by international energy agencies, which talks about, and lots of other experts have consulted to find out which are the sectors that will contribute for net zero emissions societies. Then it's basically buildings, transports, industry, electricity, and heat. So these are the sectors. They have also defined the key milestones in the pathway to net zero. So milestones has already been defined, sectors have already been identified, pathways have been designed and finalized. So the question is whether in these pathways, gender equality and social inclusion has been considered or not. And if it is considered, how? How are we planning to achieve while including gender equality and social inclusion? The approach needs to be defined, needs to be discussed, and it has to be make sure that both gender equality and social inclusion are added in these sectors. Now the next point is, if those are the sectors where actually within the climate industries, the jobs or the livelihoods that's going to be created. No doubt it's an energy transition. Renewable energy and energy efficiency, for sure, but smart buildings, smart materials, smart cities, smart and climate resilient agriculture, digital technologies and for climate actions, effective transport systems. These are the future industries where lots of livelihoods and jobs that's going to be created. Again, we have to make sure that gender equality and social inclusion are included. It's not that women are getting more opportunities for jobs, but they should also play an equal role in the decision-making space. So we have to create that equal space for everyone, not only as a consumer, but also as a supplier and also as a decision maker. So that's something what we have to make sure. So there is a huge scope for livelihood generation and job opportunities for women and vulnerable communities in these climate industries. So now the next point is, where exactly and what kind of job opportunities that exist if we move from conventional energy into a more efficient, sustainable, inclusive, just energy transitions. IRENA report, International Renewable Energy Agency report, says there is a huge job opportunities. And if I read it, then it says that by 2050, around 120 million jobs that would be available in the energy sector. That includes fossil fuel, nuclear, hydrogen, everything. But if I focus only on the renewable energy sector, then there will be around 24 million jobs in the renewable energy sector that will be created by 2050. These jobs needs to be or ought to be available, accessible for both men and women. So that's where the approach needs to be. Of course, there are lots of gaps at this moment. We know that when the fossil fuel transition is happening, the people who are losing their jobs, their skills at this moment are not sufficient or not enough to cater to the kind of jobs that's going to be created with energy transition. So there would be a gap in the skills. There would be a gap in access to information. But we have to make sure that both men and women should get equal opportunities in this job or the labor market. So now with all those contexts, I would try to bring some of the UNEP's initiative through its own partners, either by other UN agencies or with international collaborations. So one of the example is Empower. So we have a joint program between UNEP and UN Women. My UN Women colleagues are here, and I'm sure Maria is also there virtually. So it's an joint programs. It's funded by government of Sweden, government of New Zealand, Germany, and Switzerland. And the overall objective of Empower is mainstreaming gender equality and human rights in climate action, in energy action, and in disaster risk reduction action. However, one of the important components within Empower project or program is creating climate resilient livelihoods for women and vulnerable communities using renewable and low carbon technologies. So this is what we have been focusing upon. And in order to achieve this, what we are trying to do is we are trying to work on access to finance for women and marginalized communities, access to technology, and access to skill sets. When I say access to finance, what we are trying to do is mobilizing investment for clean energy and providing affordable finance to women and marginalized communities to run their businesses. This is what we are trying to do. But as you know, enterprise has different size and different profiles. There could be nano entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs, startups, SMEs, MSMEs. So there are different kind of enterprise, and their requirements are different. Their finance requirements are different. So we are working with different finance mechanisms. So we are working with fund managers, trying to set up different finance facility, which is specifically and dedicatedly for women-led SMEs, working in climate positive interventions. We are working with microfinancing institutions and banks, which are relatively smaller enterprise with a lesser finance requirement. And we are setting different loan and credit schemes in an affordable rate. We also run different accelerator program for startups, and then we promote more climate tech startups, provide lots of training on different topics, and help them to raise investment. So basically, we work on the different scale and different profile of women entrepreneurs and raising investment, providing access to affordable finance so that they can run their climate businesses. Besides this, as I said, we also work on access to technologies. So we have already implemented number of projects or interventions using low carbon technologies. You can see those examples. It could be for solar drinking water, it could be for solar drying, solar cold chain, or irrigation systems, or selling renewable energy products. I mean, these are few of the examples, but that could be n number of examples for bringing renewable energy technologies and using it for enterprise development. We tried to provide, and we did a market assessment trying to find out which are those low carbon technologies which has a potential for women economic empowerment and entrepreneurship development. So that's where our focus has been. And we are trying to bring technologies for the benefits of women and marginalized communities. The third point, as I said, is access to skill sets. So when we say skill sets, we have dedicated capacity building program for enterprise development for women and marginalized groups. But beyond that, we also have skill development program for job creations in energy transition sectors. So there are different subsectors that have been identified, again by IEA, IRENA, by UNEP, on all those different subsectors which needs workforce in those subsectors. So we will have dedicated skill development program for women in those lines. So that's the upskilling part. But we also focus on reskilling. That's what I also heard today. And the World Economic Forum has already said that we have to have artificial intelligence, cloud computing, big data and other technologies for high priority for business leaders. So we need, even all those businesses, the reskilling of that. And Empower program has all this focus in all those three segments or sectors, but specifically for women and marginalized communities. So the second example that I would like to take here is on extreme heat. We heard so much about extreme heat and how the temperature is being rise in last few years. So if you see, then extreme heat is going to be a big climate challenge in coming years. Considering that, United Nations Secretary General has called for an action on extreme heat on 25th July 2024. And that call for action has talked quite a lot on how can we provide effective cooling options and managing the heat stress for vulnerable communities. So that's where the focus is. I'm not going in detail of all these facts, but this is mind-boggling. This is already threatening how extreme heat is creating lots of impact on jobs, on mortalities, on labor forces, on students. So there are lots of impacts happening. Heat stress and women, again, it's glaring facts. I'm not going in detail of this because of time constraint, but I'll share this presentation, and you can see that heat stress is going to impact women badly. I mean, of course, with pregnant women and women working outside, they are going to be highly impacted by this. So what's the solution? One of the things, again, what UNEP, along with its multi-stakeholder partners, trying to do is working on the cooling options. So in COP28, 71 countries have agreed and came together, and the Global Cooling Pledge was announced. One of the objectives of Global Cooling Pledge is to provide sustainable cooling options for all. So how can we provide access to cooling for all? That's one of the focus, to make sure that the vulnerable communities, make sure that those people, the informal groups who are staying in informal settlements also have better cooling options. So that needs to be ensured. So considering all those things, again, Cool Coalition, along with its partners, are working on passive cooling options, nature-based solution, national cooling action plans, and make sure that the gender and social inclusion are included on all those national action plans. So we are also discussing with number of sub-region and trying to develop roadmap for passive cooling for vulnerable communities, and integrating gender and social inclusion in the cooling actions. So that's something what we are trying. Beyond this, as I said, transport has been one of the big sector contributing to high emission. And when the transition would happen, we also need to have effective mobility systems. Transport systems. One of our projects, again, it's a multi-stakeholder program, which is running in 40 countries, where we are supporting 40 countries and with an investment of around 50 million US dollar, and there are lots of components involved in that. One of the components talk about integrating gender issues into electric mobility and work with policymakers in designing gender-responsive policies and solutions. So in transport sector also, we are trying to see how can we prepare more gender-friendly vehicles, how could the pathways and the transport systems would be much more gender responsive. And how can we make sure that all those vulnerable communities have access to better transport systems? So we are working with different policymakers and including those aspects strongly. Besides this, we are also working with specific countries, for example, in this case, Indonesia, where we are trying to develop socially inclusive, sustainable energy transitions. This is something what UNEP Collaborating Center, which is called UNEP Copenhagen's Climate Center, is working and trying to develop lots of technical assistance component and capacity building supports, and including the social inclusion component in the energy transition pathways for a specific province in Indonesia and at the national scale in Indonesia. We definitely needed more such projects to be included in the region and make sure that the social inclusion aspects be integrated. The last example, what I would take, is of CTCN. So CTCN is under the technology arm of UNFCCC, and one of the objectives of CTCN is to provide climate-friendly technology and creating enabling environment for promoting climate-friendly technology. And it's more on technology transfer. So under CTCN, there is a dedicated targets, and if there is a gender equality-driven technical assistance submitted by the country, then CTCN will consider it on a priority basis and provide that technical assistance. CTCN also came out with gender and technology nexus reports, which talks about how the technology needs to be customized as per the need of different community in the society, including women and vulnerable communities, and then design the technology accordingly or promote those technologies specific for bringing more benefits for women and marginalized communities. They also provided dedicated capacity building programs specifically for women. So recently there was some training on artificial intelligence for climate actions, considering women as the core beneficiaries. So these are a few of the examples. This is my last slide, and few key takeaways from the context and the examples, the best practices, what I try to share. Again, I will not read it all. It's already there, I mean, in the note. So one of the key takeaway is future climate industries and just transition need to be sustainable, inclusive, and resilient. And we have to consider the benefits of all the segments of the societies. Access to finance is going to be a big points for achieving net zero targets. Gender responsive climate finance is extremely important, and we have to have gender responsive climate finance targets and indicators in that regard. Access to skill sets and digital technologies must be brought in to improve the clean energy transition, and that skill sets needs to be available and accessible for everyone. And we definitely need stronger and larger international collaborations in order to achieve the huge goal that has been set. But without that, without achieving the net zero targets, we all know the repercussions and the consequences. The positive part is there are lots of interactions, collaborations that have been established, and we are really looking forward for more collaborations with communities like you, with organizations like you, to make the net zero transition as a real success within the stipulated time period. Thank you so very much for your attention and looking forward for more collaboration in future. Thank you.
예, 모한티 매니저님 열정적인 발표.
Well, that is a very passionate presentation. Thank you. You talked about this bigger impact of climate change on the women and other vulnerable communities. And you also talked about the importance of women being included in the decision-making process and being included in the financial access. And now I'd like to move on to the second presentation.
부장님께서
And we have Dr. Chu Moo-hyun. He's the Chief Economist Officer of the Institute for Regional Industry Economy, and he's researching on the division of the labor market resulting from the climate crisis. And today he's going to talk about the transition into the carbon neutral economy and the prospect for employment. Good afternoon. Since I'm the last speaker, I'm not sure this is a fortunate thing or unfortunate thing because everybody will be tired and I need to speed up because we are behind a slightly schedule. So I think my mission is to meet the given the time. As I prepared my presentation, I thought it would be better to explain my background every 2 years. So human resource supply and the demand is published. And 20 years ago, I introduced the report and is a research mechanism at Korea Employment Information Service. And the gender capability, the impact, the survey, has been conducted, and before I systemized the capability evaluation system. And I recently was asked to assess the impact of a net zero economy on the employment, especially there are a lot of uncertainty in the future, especially the employment of women. And I was asked from this Women Research Institute, and I answered that it is impossible to give you the prospect because it is too uncertain, and I'm an economist and I work on diverse data sets, and I do not make a data that describe a gender difference. We all have ideas and the concepts about the gender issues, and I thought we do not have to distinguish woman and man in the gender issues. However, that we want to provide statistics and objective figures that describe the employment of women or the jobs of women. And to do that, I think that we have to look at the current circumstances that are on the way, because that will be a very good clue for us to predict the job issues, and especially the gender-based job issues and inequality among genders. And to predict these issues, we have to accurately look at the current employment structure and employment mechanism. Last week, I attended a regional economic development forum in the Copenhagen and Malaysia, and I'm really happy that I can speak in Korean in front of this audience, because I had to listen to English presentation and discussion for the 2 days. At the time, the climate issue was the main theme, and also we talked about the digital issues and the gender issues that are unfolding at the local level, regional level, and how the gender issues will evolve in the future. And there are a lot of countries situated nearby, to each other in the European continent. And I personally thought that so we can get ahead when we compare ourselves to other countries given the current changes. However, we have to talk about the women and the gender issues whenever there are changes, because the changes will unsettle the situation of the vulnerable groups. Also, it can change the economic status or social status of a people, and otherwise we wouldn't have been worried about the impact of changes on the gender, and especially the women. And there could be the rosy picture and the gloomy picture. And for the gloomy picture, I'm going to touch upon that in my slides. And the speaker from the UNEP, I'm sorry, I cannot recall the name. The speaker well explained the impact of climate change on the industries. So I'm going to skip this part. And McKinsey report was mentioned earlier by other speakers, and it basically shows that the jobs are changing, and the jobs can be decreasing or increasing. And there's one clear message in the McKinsey report. And so the Korea, Japan, and Germany, they are the major producer of automobiles, should be wary of the changes, because the automobile industry is a backbone industry of the Korean economy, and it may face a lot of changes in the future. Another major industries of Korea will be steel making and the chemical industries. As there will be a lot of changes in the jobs in such sectors. But is it just about the number of jobs or the jobs of women and the men? And there's a balance, but when we put every data put together, so electricity, oil, gas, and automaking and fossil fuel-based industries will face significant changes, thereby a decrease in the number of jobs in those sectors. We don't have to worry about the exact numbers, and it is impossible to predict the number, and there's nothing we can do even if we know the number. So rather than the figures, we hope that we will understand the consequences of the change in the employment in those sectors. So how can we respond to these changes? And there are a lot of aspects we need to keep in mind. First of all, we have to think about the regulation. And by the 2030 and 2035, we need to think about the given future, because we need to follow the regulation and like how many degrees there should be dropped in the Earth's temperature, or what percentage we have to reduce the carbon emissions by 2050. These are our targets. However, there's a missing area, and we will briefly, roughly know the figures in the future, but we have to know the changes that may occur by the gender or the jobs or the type of occupation and age group, and there could be different consequences on age groups as well. So we cannot have a complete picture given the complexities of the issues. So let's look at the key industries of Korea and what changes these sectors will experience. So I will look at these the changes in the automaking and the steelmaking industry. So there is the given that the automobile sector is moving towards electrification, while the chemical and the steelmaking industries are different. And we have to find the cost-efficient materials that can replace steel. We have to depend on the steel industries, and the petrochemicals or products that we are using today have been extracted from the petroleum, and the problem is how and how much carbon can we reduce. So technological change is required, and we have to change how we produce those materials and products in order to maintain our competitiveness. On the right-hand side, you can see the transition to eco-friendly vehicles and scenarios for parts makers and the automakers announced by the Korean government, especially the engines of parts is a sector that will face significant change. We need to look at the current situation in order to predict the future. If you look at the slide 8, it describes the number of people who are in the part making, and these are the people who have the lowest level of skills. However, if you look at 302, so these are large automakers that hire fewer women workers, but in part manufacturing sector, the proportion of women is quite huge. And so 303 and 304 are part making sector where there is a high concentration of female workers. And in part making sector, it can be divided into the engine and other parts. If you look at the right-hand side picture, that you can see the employees by gender and occupational category. So in steelmaking sector, and this is a steelmaking sector, and the steelmaking account for the largest proportion in Korea's emission. So steel industry has to change its processes, and iron ore should be replaced with electric furnaces, and we have to change how we make steel, and POSCO and other steel making companies need to transition into the hydrogen reduction technology. And by 2050, the steel making industries announced that it's transition into net zero economy. And this is the gender-based employment structure prospect. We have to look at the concentration of a female employment. As you see, and there are the managerial jobs, and the proportionally a high number of the people, so females workers, are in the office jobs and also administration and the simple labor. And I want to make this a correction, and the women and the men says 0.2%, but it's 21%. And depending on the decarbonization effort of the steel industry, so the things will be different, but the total number of female workers will not change. This is a part highlighted in the yellow. And if products are heavier, then you may think that they are not prone to economic changes and the ups and downs of the economy. However, that is not true. And in the market economy, and the apartment prices are very sensitive to the ups and downs of the economy. The same is for the steel industry. rather than the employment prospect resulting from decarbonization. In the long term, technological change and the process change will impact the female employment. So we may give more opportunities for the female workers to participate in the high technologies sector, and there is a gradual improvement in the participation of women in the high-tech sector. And the next is the petrochemical industry, and there are a lot of concerns for the Korean economy, and the petrochemical industries accounts for 70% in the carbon emission in Korea. It's almost 20%. So they have to change technology and how they make petrochemical products. What is important is in the gender employment structure and the gender-based the division of labor, and the women will also face a lot of the problem because of their vulnerability in the employment structure of the petrochemical industry. And you can see the proportion of women in number 8 and 9, and the female workers are almost non-existent. It means that the few women are working with the actual production sites. So they are basically they are holding administrative jobs and office jobs, and so most female workers in the petrochemical center are in the administrative support. So there is a male-oriented production circumstance, and when the petrochemical industry is moving toward the net zero economy, then that will be an opportunity for the female workers. So I need to wrap up my presentation, and I can save 3 or 4 minutes by wrapping up right now. And when we talk about the carbon neutrality, we emphasize the fair transition. So we have to secure our rights to fair transition. However, the rights and opportunities are in power dynamics. In case of female workers, most of them are the non-unionized workers, and the male workers are unionized workers. And when we emphasize the fair transition, and unionized workers will raise the issues strongly, and then what happens is, as a result, is should we go for decarbonization, or do you need to stop technology advancement? The first pitfall we may fall into is the trap of low skills, because we are already experiencing that trap in the manufacturing sector and the manufacturing intensive regions, and the many residents in the regions talk about the potential loss of the jobs because of energy transition. But however, there are positive notes as well, and transition into the carbon neutrality requires us to change the technology and adopt digital technology, and they embrace automation, and then more opportunities will be given to women than men. That will be a positive scenario for gender equality. And these predictions may not 100% accurate, and I think this is an area of academic discourse. I'm looking forward to your questions as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for keeping the time. And through this presentation, we could see that what changes may occur in the employment of the steel production sector, automaking, and petrochemical sector, especially in steel making. The processing technology improvement will give more opportunities to the female workers. On the other hand, it can be as a problem for non-unionized workers when the industries move toward the net zero.
함께 온라인으로 참여해 주고 계신 마리아 홀츠버그
Next, Maria Holzberg, Deputy Regional Director of OIC under UN Women Regional Office Asia and the Pacific, will be the first discussant. While she is joining us online from Bangkok. So is she on? Okay. Then, Maria Holzberg, Deputy Regional Director, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, distinguished chair. Appreciate so much the previous speakers who had framed very, very well. I want to also say a particular hello both to Monyan Yu and Paramita Mohanty for framing. Both of your presentations were so insightful. So hello, everyone in the room. I am so sorry I'm not physically with you, and I really hope you will stay focused for this online version of our presentation. Both of the two previous speakers offered a very interesting perspective as well as hopeful vision for the future of climate industries and the important role that women will play in shaping it. So I really want to thank you both for setting the stage for this dialogue on these crucial issues. And I want to say that integrating a gender focus on climate action is vital both now, today, this moment, and for the future. And I think Paramita really framed that. So today I have the honor to show you, to quickly go through three key areas. So one of them is to talk about why we want to talk about gender and climate change. So why is there a connection between the two? Then I want to talk about, so how, if we're supposed to be gender responsive, what will that look like? What do we mean when we say that? Because climate obviously should affect everyone equally, does it not? The other part, the last part will be focused on, well, how do we work from an international development corporation perspective to really ensure that we can move forward on addressing the climate change. So the first section is to explain to you what you already probably are well aware. For us, and the whole reason for this dialogue is to talk about climate change because it is the defining crisis of the 21st century. And we are today, right now, at a pivotal crossroad. So as you can see on the slide here, we see the statistics from the World Meteorological Organization that there's a 80% chance that the global annual average temperature will exceed the 1.5 degree limit in at least one of the next 5 years. So this increased global temperature means we will have more climate change and climate-induced crisis, which will will increase in both frequency and in intensity. So we are not talking about statistics. We are talking about what is happening today. It is our reality. We need to act now. So the climate crisis is not an ecological crisis. It is fundamentally a question of justice, prosperity, and gender equality. And we look at climate change as a threat multiplier, which means that existing social and economic injustices become worse. And those who are usually in that space are women. So women often bear the brunt of the compounded challenges as they navigate increased care work. They navigate higher rates of gender-based violence, including early marriage. And I will talk about this a little bit further. We know for instance, in Cambodia, UN Women conducted a report that shows a trend that I think we all should be concerned about. So ongoing droughts are driving child marriages among girls from the poorest households, which then results in other serious consequences as increased risk of intimate partner violence and adolescent pregnancies. So families and households, just to put it into simplistic terms, families that are facing drought situations and may not be able to ensure that there's enough food for the whole family, they tend, we now have it shown statistically, they tend to find alternative ways by marrying their adolescent girls into other families, therefore reducing the burden in their own family. That's a very alarming trend. Also, globally, women perform 76% of unpaid care work. So that means 3 times more than men. This is a global statistic. It will look different in different countries. It will look different in different contexts. But what we know is that women perform more unpaid care work than men do. And during climate-related disasters, this burden increases significantly because women also take on the recovery tasks. And when we talk about unpaid care work, that is care for family members, either elderly or people living with disability in the family, or children, as well as key household responsibilities. So then I will say the thing that we in UN Women always say, even though there's disproportionate impacts, women are not just victims, they are also key agents of change. And they're at the heart of climate adaptation, they're at the heart of resilience building and sustainable development. And we want to say this as UN Women, and we believe this because it's absolutely important, and we will talk more about women's leadership. But having said that, also, we say that while also seeing how few women gain access to the important leadership spaces that addresses the gendered impacts of climate change. So as previous speakers have highlighted, the global push for net zero emissions really does offer new avenues for women and girls to step into more significant roles in climate action. It is our job to support that process, and this is why we need international development cooperation. We see also through evidence that women's leadership in climate action results in better resource governance. So resources are better planned. Conservation outcomes are better because usually women are in these informal spaces where they need to adapt into the spaces where the climate-induced disaster is happening. And we see that women play a significant role in disaster preparedness. The other thing is that green transitions offer opportunities for women and girls, but without the right support, women can be marginalized again and face unequal access to new emerging opportunities in the green economy. So the time is now. It's not only about looking at the current climate, the state of climate change, it is also about making sure women do not get left off in the green transition process. So to ensure fair net zero transition, we really must integrate gender perspectives into climate action and use this shift to as a chance to address inequalities and fully harness women's potential in climate solutions. So we want to talk about who are the enablers. What is an enabler of being gender responsive or doing gender responsive climate action? And for those who don't know what it's gender responsive mean, it means really looking at the socio norm that is going on in your community and making sure that everything you do actually looks at enhancing gender equality in that community. So the enablers for a gender just transition that benefits women properly, you're looking at 4 examples on the screen here. So the first one is about women's leadership. They must be recognized as key actors in climate action. So we know, and you know, because we are in a community together, that women do bring important perspectives and solutions, especially in grassroots context, but also across the entire spectrum. So they are very much, and especially those on grassroots level, at the forefront of climate impacts. So it's important to train and to give resources and opportunities to make sure that women can remain on the front lines of climate action and be heard. So the second point is related to the use of gender and environment data. Data is absolutely critical to understand the specific vulnerabilities and needs of women and girls. I used the example of the correlation between droughts and increase in early marriage. The only way that I can use that correlation is because we have statistical and data work to prove it. This evidence creates effective climate policies that address the unique challenges experienced by women. So integration of gender-specific data in policy development helps to design interventions that are both equitable and impactful and really help track progress of ongoing efforts. So the third point that you're looking at on your screen, it's about the climate policies and specifically, most importantly, underline it in your notebook, budgets, and making sure that when we allocate the budgets, they're done in a transparent way. It's important to use the global frameworks that already exist to guide us in how to integrate gender considerations into national climate efforts. So, because when you use an international commitment, which has been agreed by a consensus of governments that have shared their good practices across the world, we know that we can create standards that are of the highest nature to follow to ensure that gender equality is embedded into domestic agendas. The final point you're looking at in your screen is about strengthening women's economic empowerment, which means that women need to have access to economic resources, credit markets, and enabling them to invest in resilience building activities and technologies. We also want to provide support to reduce the care work. Remember, I said unpaid care work is one of the biggest barriers for women's for women to access employment. It's important for them to have ways to ensure that their care burden is reduced.
And Maria,
yes.
Maria, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you. We have time constraint. So can you wrap up your presentation?
Yes, I will do the last 2 slides because I will make a comment about from my colleague, Paramita, who gave an overview of a initiative that UN Women and UNEP are collectively doing, which focuses on climate financing. So I will end on why we want to do international development cooperation. And where they will fill the gap. So national policies and frameworks are absolutely important. We need to share resources, best practices to align efforts. And we need to make sure that there's a pool of resources that streamline mutual support to ensure that no country and no person within the country is left behind. So when we look at the way ahead and really about what we need to do to foster, we want to talk about aligning commitments towards gender action. So it should not be an afterthought. We want it to be put into the center because the people at the center of the impacts are women in communities. We want to talk about co-financing, and Paramita gave an excellent presentation on why it's important for the financing. And we're not just talking about political will, it is about ensuring that also budgets are being financed. We want to talk about knowledge sharing, but that's what we're doing right now. And then finally, my last point is to talk about effective collaboration, because it is so important that effective collaboration is not effective unless it involves governments, NGOs, private sector, and most importantly, the local communities. So we should not do a top-down approach. We really need to look at an inclusive, multi-stakeholder approach that we can create to create a truly transformative response to the climate crisis. And I will think there to the end.
예, 마리아 홀츠버그 부소장님 또 발제 감사드리고 또 시간을
Thank you so much for your speech. My apologies for not giving you ample time for your speech. She gave us the key factors for gender responsive climate actions. Now I'd like to invite the second discussant.
And Hyunjung Park from the Institute for Climate Change as an Action will talk about a just transition toward gender equality. Nice to meet you all. So I am Park Hyunjung, and I am a Vice Director of the Institute for Climate Change Action. And we have been here for 4 hours. So I have a mission to complete my discussion in 5 minutes. I'm a very talkative person, but I'll do my best to give this presentation in a short time. If you look at the characteristics of a female employment in carbon-intensive industries, they are low female employment rate, marginalization from core production systems, and non-unionized labor. So when we assess the impact of the carbon neutrality on the female employment, are the female workers vulnerable or not with transition into net zero? And climate crisis brings us a complex disasters, and we have to deal with employment of women from not just from a policy perspective, but also from the employment and this narrative perspectives. I want to use these images, and this image was from the Gyeonghang Daily. And the title of this article that used this image is "No corrective actions was made after sexual discrimination was found in employment." So about the 200 findings were made, and only 20% of these problems were corrected. And we are now very sensitive to economic situation, and we are pushing forward with green growth. However, it's not easy to grow the economy like in the past. And when the economy enters a low growth period, and women who are sensitive to the economic changes are likely to lose jobs. And this picture was from also a Gyeonghang Daily. And the carbon neutrality should be an opportunity for all. And labor affected by the net zero are raising their voices right now. So, however, as you see in the picture, those who are standing in the light are the male workers. However, they are the workers that are left in the shadows. These are female workers in carbon-intensive industries. We want to create a new future, a new world with a net zero. However, not all opportunities are given to women, and our basic rights said that no one should be left behind. But some of the people are not getting the spotlight. And this picture is often used to describe the equality and equity. This shows excellently the difference between equality and equity. And when we give the same things to everyone, does it mean the equality? And we have to recognize the differences of individuals. For tall people, they do not need steps. And those who need the steps will be the smaller ones who they need more support. So we do not distribute the same thing to everyone, and we consider the individual context and they give the opportunity to all. When I showed this picture to one of my colleagues, and maybe these men can do something for the small children. But we want all these people, including small kids, will be autonomous. So also in just transition and the climate justice, we have to consider the different circumstances of individuals. And these are messages for just transition, but nothing is easy among this list. But we have to give transition opportunities in a just way. And green growth was mentioned as a new paradigm in order to boost our economy. And what was the role of women when we pushed forward with the green growth? So women were required to recycle waste and save a lot of electricity. Women's roles were very limited when we talked about the green growth. So these roles were very limited from the consumer perspective. And carbon neutrality is a global agenda that we need to do in order to make a complete transition, and the role should be equally assigned to women. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was a very precise and a strong message, and so we have to provide the equity instead of equality, and so equity will ensure that everyone will benefit from carbon neutrality.
Now it's over 6 o'clock, which was a time we were supposed to end this forum, but we've received 2 questions from the floor. So for these 2 questions, we'd like to provide an answer for these questions. So after this, we will conclude the forum. The first question is about the energy industries to empower women and increase participation of women in the climate industries and others. What are the specific examples of this? For example, could you provide more details on the nature of these programs and the channels through which they are being conducted? Additionally, what are the challenges of these programs? So this question is directed to Mr. Ju.
Thank you very much for the question. In order to encourage female workers' participation in the economy, many companies introduced programs. However, their efforts are not sufficient. So POSCO, a steelmaker, or some major petrochemical companies and the automakers put a slogan of a shared growth and the ESG. However, if you look at the details of the ESG programs, it's just about the integration with the residents and the eco-friendly approaches in the management. However, I have a doubt whether they put sufficient effort and put sufficient financial resources into the efforts. So I may not be accurate in this assessment. However, so when I research and to write a report, and when I assess the ESG practices of Korean companies, their policies and actions are not sufficient. And the government is also implementing some problem, and the Ministry of Employment and Labor focuses on transition the regions. So at the regional level, it is promoting the economic participation of women or transition into other industries among vulnerable groups. But according to our assessment, not much budget has been injected. In 2023, the employment project budget totaled 30 trillion won. So, however, such programs budget was a mere 10 billion won. There was one more thing, and Ms. Maria Hosbach mentioned, and other speakers mentioned as well. So probably many want more precise prediction. But when we have a prediction with the data, maybe it's too late, because already the changes have been already occurring. When we grasp the data for the predictions, a lot of the things we predicted become a reality. So I think it is more important to analyze the reality with the given data. Thank you very much. Please give a big round of applause to Dr. Ju.
두 번째,
The second question, I think this is also a very good question. Climate-related projects have to consider economic viability. Currently, there is a strong perception industries focused on climate change and environmental sustainability are less profitable and struggle to generate financial returns. I question whether these industries are adequately incorporating gender equality. Personally, I believe there is still much progress needed to be made. I'd like to know if there are any successful cases where gender equality has been effectively integrated into climate change initiatives, what outcomes have been achieved, and what are your takes on the future direction of these efforts? This question goes to Ms. Mohanty. Please give us a brief answer.
For this question also, this is very important and critical. There is a strong perception that it's not, or the climate change and environment. And environment sustainability are less profitable. So here, if you see various reports, which says that at this moment, the cost of electricity from solar, from wind, and from battery storage are definitely lesser than the fossil fuel-based cost of electricity. So from that perspective, economically, if you say, it's more cheaper. And it's for the first time in 2023-24, renewable energy-based electricity generation was cheaper than fossil fuel-based. However, the perception remains that renewables is much expensive because it's variables, it's time sensitive. So the moment we design, many times it's believed that it's expensive. So the perception remains that it's expensive. However, in few countries, it's still expensive as compared to fossil fuel-based. And it's mainly because it depends on 2-3 things. A, how you design the whole systems. So technology optimization, design optimization is extremely important. The second point is, what are the regulations of your countries, whether it's allowing different type of tariff structures and interconnections or not. So based on your life cycle cost analysis, if you see, renewable energy projects are much comparable as compared to fossil fuel based. And if you add the opportunity cost, that means the time saved by environment friendly technology, the drudgery saved, and the kind of deforestation saved, if you consider all those things, the opportunity cost into your economic cost, it's much more viable as compared to fossil fuel-based systems. So it depends how you design, how your policy and regulations are, and how optimization being done. The second point is, yes, I also agree to your point that there is still much progress needed to be made to integrate gender equality in energy and climate initiatives. There are examples, there are companies who are including ESG compliance, the environment social governance compliances, and the gender equality component, but it's not enough. We also are working with a number of those initiatives and trying to see how we can integrate gender equality, but it's still on a cases basis. However, the positive point is at least we have examples. We have plenty examples, but that needs to be upscaled at a very faster rate. The third point, the gender equality has been effectively, whether we have examples, gender equality. So if you see the NDC, the nationally determined contribution, out of 179 NDC, I think 120 plus NDC just mention about gender equality in their NDCs. Just mentioning about gender equality doesn't make any sense. So there are only 50% of those who talks about how that will be achieved. And there are very few countries which sets targets for gender equality. So what we need, the last question on the future directions, we need targets to be set. We need clear indicators to be set. And we need monitoring and evaluation framework and reporting framework which can monitor how the progress is happening. We don't have any standardized M&E framework at this moment, but there are lots of discussions happening. I'll also say what Maria said, data. Data is so important. So there are lack of data which can create evidence between the nexus between gender and climate change. We need to have evidence-based policy making for which we need data. There are lots of discussions happening on this, but we need to progress faster. But as I said, the positive point is at least lots of discussions, lots of movement and progress happening on this. Time is the matter, and we have to act on that fast. Thank you.
모한테 우리 매니저님 아주.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Mohanty, for your very passionate and detailed answer. And Ms. Park Hyun-jung, can you also give us a comment?
해야 되니까요.
So I'll be very quick. So we need to look at the parameters, and given the parameters and the economics of viabilities may be undermined. So however, we have to think about the climate change environment from the consumption perspective as well. And in our case, in Korea, so climate change has not been incorporated with gender equality, and I hope to see the best practices to appear in Korea. It was a very concise and a clear message.
To these questions, if you want. No? Okay. 그러면 시간
Then, in the interest of time, let me conclude the Q&A session here. Now, I will conclude this session with the titles of the two presentations. The future climate-related industries will work for carbon neutrality, and based on social inclusion, they will have to make a just transition for gender responsive and gender equal transition. And for this, women who are most vulnerable in this transition should be given more leadership position and should be given more empowerment and accesses. And to enable this, we need to have an international collaboration. And with this, I'd like to conclude this session here. Thank you so much, the two speakers and two discussants, and the audience who has stayed with us until the end. I'd like to extend my deepest gratitude to you all. With this, I'd like to end the session here. Thank you so much.
모두 애 많이 쓰셨습니다.
Thank you very much for staying until the end. We would like to also thank the staff members of the Ministry of Gender Equality and the Family, and the speakers and the moderator, and the fifth, the Korea Gender Equality Forum. So I believe the laid the foundation for the international community and the Korea to move forward the gender equal society. With this, we are going to conclude 2024, the Korea Gender Equality Forum. Thank you very much.